Welcome to the March 20, do I have my dates right? March 25th? Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Village Board work session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll begin with a few remarks and announcements. My first remark will just be to acknowledge that this work session will be Richard Lyons, our village manager's last work session, and it's a really busy and full one, representing so many of the incredible efforts that Richard has led in recent years and months, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what Richard has contributed to Ossining. So thank you very much, Richard. You've been a wonderful partner for all of us. Thank you. And I will remind folks of some of the exciting programs that we have going on in Ossining. First, if you haven't heard yet, you must not be watching television or reading newspapers or visiting the village website, but Mind Mixer Ossining launched earlier this month. And anybody with an email address or anybody who wants to get an email address can log on to Mind Mixer Ossining. There's a link right on the villageofossining.org homepage, or if you just do a search for Mind Mixer Ossining, you'll get right there. And we're encouraging people to please visit. If you have a social media account, you can just sign in with your Facebook account. But like I said, your name and your email address is really all you need. And there are some questions up there now. There will be more questions rolling out over the next several months. Most of our questions, for at least the kickoff of this, will be focused around our downtown, particularly with the mind toward the Market Square properties. As if you are a regular viewer of our meetings, you know that we've had a significant focus on how we might be able to improve our downtown economy by making better use of the Market Square properties at the heart of our downtown. So that's what those questions are focused on. There'll be different kinds of questions coming up throughout the year, so please check that out, Mind Mixer Ossining. And then I've got a bunch of solar-related items to let you know about. You may be aware that there is a Solarize Ossining Briarcliff program. It's a short-term program. Anybody who signs up to get solar on your residential or commercial property through the Solarize Ossining Briarcliff program by June 1st, you get to take advantage of some significantly reduced savings. To learn more about it, you can link through the village website, villageofossining.org, or you can just do a quick search, Solarize Ossining Briarcliff. It was a competitive process just for our communities to be able to participate in this opportunity, it's an exciting program, and I hope you'll learn about it. We have some more dates that are being scheduled to have workshops again at, I believe the community center is going to be one of them, around the community, so you can come meet the installers, learn all about the equipment, the financing, and ask any questions that you can think of. If you're interested in solar at all, whether you go with this installer or not, it's incredibly informative and valuable use of your time. We've already had a couple of them, and it's been very successful. Building on that solar theme, it's Earth Day in April. Just happens to work out very well. On April 16th, at the Ossining Public Library. The Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series has a little bit of a different kind of documentary this year, this month. It'll be, it's a series, there's an online series called Solutions. And sometimes the news that we get about climate change or our challenges in environmentalism are very negative. And this is actually about a small group of people from Westchester that travel around the world, and they're highlighting some innovative solutions to environmental challenges around the world. So we're going to watch some episodes from that online program, and then a little different twist on our usual panel discussion. We've invited 5 folks from the area to talk about things that they are doing right here in Westchester in the Hudson Valley that are innovative solutions for addressing climate challenges. So I hope you'll join us 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library on May 16th. That's a Thursday. That is just the warm-up for Earth Day. 2 days later at the Ossining Waterfront, the 18th, Saturday the 18th, will be...
I think it's April. You said May.
I said May, thank you. Both of, everything's happening in April.
Okay.
Thank
okay,
you.
Good.
Oh,
Just,
really
just wanted to
good,
raise
good.
that up.
Thank you. So April 16th is the program at the library. Thank you. April 18th is the program at the waterfront, the Ossining Earth Day Festival. Music all day. The stage is going to be solar powered by the same group that does this trip around the world. Some great local musicians. Mike Risco is hosting. The Mike Risco Band will be playing. KJ Dennert will be there. This group called Solar Punch. It's going to be a great day, plus lots of exhibits. If you are a local business, especially if you have some environmental sustainability focus to your business, there are still some spots available for exhibitors, but actually most of them are taken. So go right away to greenossining.org. Okay, now that I filled your calendar, your April calendar with exciting programs, does anybody else have announcements?
Yes,
Mr.
I have a
Rivera?
couple more dates to fill your calendar with. This Monday, March 30th, at the Ossining Rec Center in the Art Room, we're going to be concluding the Suicide Prevention Series. It's a program that was co-sponsored by Communities That Care, the town, and many other local leaders. And our last topic for the series is entitled The Community Collective of Prevention. So after we've had all these workshops that have addressed how we see suicide and how it affects us at a local level and beyond, now is a chance that we get to come as a community through all walks of life and see, okay, how do we want to address this here in Ossining? What are the issues and challenges that we're facing when it comes to suicide? So I definitely encourage you to stop by on Monday at 7 p.m. And for more information, you can call 917-651-1889. My other announcement is this Saturday, the Hispanic Task Force of the Westchester County Board of Legislators will be in Ossining for the first time since it was established a couple years ago. It's going to be held at Claremont School at 2 Claremont Road. It's going to be in conjunction with the Ossining Farmers Market. That way we'll be able to reach the most people. And what's great about it is that the following services that I'll read right now will actually have reps there. So they could actually answer questions and applications on site, such as the County Health Department, the County Social Services Department, the County Clerk's Office, the Westchester Hispanic Coalition, Latino Youth College Access, Village and Town Representatives, Hudson Health Plan, and our very own Open Door Family Medical Center. And that's going to be held this Saturday from 10 to 12 at Claremont School. I look forward to seeing you there, or at least seeing you as you shop at the market. You could stop by and get some information. And my last announcement is mobile office hours that I'll be hosting tomorrow at Picante Cafe, which is right down the street from here at 193 Main Street from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Thank
I always
you.
call that place Kimbaya. It's really picante now.
I see Picante Kumbaya, the coffee house on Main Street, 193 Main Street.
All right.
It is good coffee, though,
It is good coffee, actually.
right?
They have good empanadas, too. And the
Yeah,
smoothies, too,
yeah,
they're
the
pretty good.
juices
It's a
are
good
good
place.
too.
Yeah.
So after you do that on Saturday with Catherine and everybody else in Marcus Farmers Market, on Sunday, March 29, we actually going to be having, and I know we've been announcing this a couple times, so we're going to have a fundraiser, or the PBA is having a fundraiser to help out one of the fellow officers that his house burned down about a month and a half ago now. So come and help us for the fundraiser of Officer Walker, and is in Maya Rivera, is in the town, and starts from 4 o'clock to 10 p.m. So we'll expect you to be there to help out one of our own. So thank you.
Yeah, they've got some great raffle items too.
Yes, it-
Yeah, you could go home lucky.
Good raffle, good food, good cause.
All right. Richard, please lead us.
Okay, thank you. As the mayor has said, we have a very interesting agenda on this evening. It'll be followed by a official legislative segment to pass a resolution, if you're so inclined, and then followed by an executive session to discuss personnel qualifications of a particular individual. The first item on the agenda, it's sort of the two, one follows the other. It has to do with the water demand and the future potential water needs of the community, and also the service area, which includes the town unconsolidated area. The first item is a discussion of the water demand management plan. We had the opportunity to meet with Bill Richardson from New York City DEC. New York City has done an analysis of its own facilities and tried to determine areas where the system can be tightened up, where Conservation can be achieved through improving on the existing infrastructure and looking at it in other technical ways. And they are now extending a similar opportunity to the Village of Austining as one of the largest city outside users of New York City water. So with that, it was a very interesting presentation and discussion. I'm happy that they're here this evening to speak to you, and I'll turn it over to Andy Teese.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. As the village manager has given the introduction, we're very lucky to have these two senior management people here, Bill Richardson and Anthony Vaccaro from New York City's section. We deal with them daily, not quite daily, but monthly. They're in charge of the actual consumption, the billing, everything that we deal with New York City on our level, and also approval sides. If we are looking to increase the capacity of our filtration plant, we would send plans with our consulting engineers to this group, and they would review everything. So they're engineers, and they're also decision makers. So as Richard mentioned, we are one of the larger users. We purchase between $1.5 million and $2 million worth of purchased water off New York City every year. So we fall into a unique group where we are the 10th largest user of New York City's water system north of New York City. It's advantageous to us because it makes us eligible for this project, which they're going to discuss in their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Should we get out of the way?
Thank you, Andy.
Valerie, you going to start me up? So Mary Garrity, members of the Village Board, thank you for having me. My name is Bill Richardson with New York City Department of Environmental Protection. So it's a DEP. I noticed it was a DEC on the agenda.
Sorry.
So just wanted to make that clarification. Yep. Can you hear me okay? Am I speaking into the mic appropriately enough?
That would be Tom. Okay, we're good.
Very good. So on behalf of Commissioner Lloyd, Deputy Commissioner Rush, and Deputy Commissioner Licata, I'd like to thank you for having me here today. I brought with me Anthony Vaccaro. He's New York City's newest wholesale water manager. He actively participates and manages our wholesale water management program on a day-to-day basis. He and I together, as Andy mentioned, we go through the water billing and all engineering approvals for connections to New York City's water system on a wholesale basis. Overall, our wholesale basis is about 10% of our supply. It serves nearly 1 million people, in addition to the entire New York City water supply, which serves a population of nearly 8.4 million. So it's together, those two numbers combined to be half the population of New York State. Village of Austining last year actually used more than 1 billion gallons a year overall, and it's just slightly over 1 billion. And today I want to tell you about a really exciting partnership effort that New York City is advancing with currently our top 10 wholesale customers, and we do expect to probably roll this out to our 11 through 20 group as well in the near term for this year. So the program is based on water demand management, and that's kind of a fancy and a newer word for water conservation. The real difference is that not only does water demand management encompass traditional conservation measures like toilet replacements, fixture replacements, plumbing codes, but it also looks at system optimization and system losses. That's a real key component. Anywhere in some of the audits and the work that we've done with our other partners in this program, we've seen water system losses that have been between 20% and upwards of 40% of a system's use. So that billion gallons a year that you purchase, if the loss was 40%, only 600 million would come out into your distribution system and be available for billing and revenue collection. So 40% was not an accurate number for the Village of Austining. I was just throwing it out there. Don't let me panic you. I see the looks and expressions on your face. It is an accurate number for some other users that are connected to our system. So today, let's go through the agenda real quick. I want to talk a little bit about New York City's water demand management program as a whole, some of the trends, our overall goal. I want to talk about our wholesale water efficiency program. That's what the program that's available to you tonight is that I'm going to discuss. Lastly, I'll close off with the timeline and then answer any questions that you have. So why do we want to do demand management? Water is obviously a precious resource. The wise and efficient use of that precious resource is definitely key to the financial sustainability and vitality of not only New York City, but also the region. As I said, 10% of our supply goes out to wholesalers in between Ulster County, New York, and Westchester County, New York. It benefits both drinking water and wastewater systems. Any volume that you can reduce on a drinking water side is definitely usually volume that will reduce on a collection system and a wastewater treatment side. It reduces supply, which is your direct cost for actual purchase of water, treatment costs for chemicals, pumping, filtration, pumping costs for actually distributing that water throughout your distribution system. And it enables us to manage a finite resource with growing populations. Another key reason for why we would do demand management is that water shortage periods happen. There can be two reasons for water shortages. There's well-known infrastructure upgrades that New York City has embarked upon. We have a very aggressive capital plan, over $14 billion in the next 10 years. We have some key pieces of infrastructure which have been operating for 100 years and more and haven't been fully rehabilitated. So we're going to start to take those out of service and put in full rehabilitation programs. And then just on the natural cycle, there's climate-based shortages. We're statistically due for a drought. We've had them approximately decadal, and it's been since 2002 when the last time we went into any type of a water shortage from a climate reason basis. So I put up this plot. It's really great. It shows from 1960 to approximately 2020. And it shows the population growth for New York City and our water use on a whole. So you can see the blue line is that rapid ramp up and increase in 1970 and a really high value of nearly 1.4 billion gallons a day throughout the 70s until the early 1990s when it went on an equally rapid decline. The rapid decline is associated with our universal metering program and also some initial conservation measures that New York City put in place, like a toilet replacement program. And as you can see, the population was growing, but not nearly the same pattern as the water usage. So this next plot takes us from the original 1960 to 2015 period, and it also projects us out to 2040. So you can see we went through our initial large rise and decline in water usage, and we've reached a point now where we have two different scenarios for projection. One is a baseline scenario without additional efficiency measures. That shows us slightly increasing and creeping back up to about 1.2 billion gallons a day. And then the lower, flatter value is our additional efficiency scenario, and that's basically a flat projection moving out 20 years.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly as you're presenting it. When you refer to New York City demand, you're referring to, that includes us because we purchase the billion gallons from you?
These two figures are strictly New York City.
Just New York City,
So they'd
okay.
be approximately proportional, you
Okay.
know, but they're not including the
Okay.
wholesale sector.
Thanks.
Some of our water shortages on the long-term basis, we have our infrastructure repairs. We have a Catskill Aqueduct. That's the older of our two major water transmission infrastructure. That has a rehabilitation program that's under design right now and very nearly to become operational. So we have long-term short shutdowns scheduled in 2016, 2017, and 2018. You're not served by the Catskill Aqueduct directly, so it's not of immediate concern to the village of Ossining. There's also a lower section, which is south of Kensico Reservoir and supplies lower Westchester County, and that's scheduled for repair and rehabilitation in the 2024 to 2025. That's sort of a kickoff on construction. It'll be a many-year program for that. The Delaware Aqueduct is New York City's newer of our two main Catskill and Delaware water supplies, and that one is scheduled for a major Ronette West Branch tunnel repair in 2022. That's actually building a new bypass tunnel underneath the Hudson River just north of the Newburgh Beacon Bridge. And finally, our New Croton Aqueduct, that is finally being restored to service, and the village of Ossining does have the ability to withdraw water from the new Croton Aqueduct at our Shaft 4. And so we had that aqueduct offline from 2004 to through 2013 for aqueduct rehabilitation. And next month, we are expecting to operate our new Croton filtration plant and put water into the New York City distribution system for the first time from that plant. On the weather and the climate side, I threw out a couple of the obvious examples of extreme events that we've had: Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Irene, Tropical Storm Lee. Those can create water shortage periods for two reasons. Superstorm Sandy was obviously the electrical problem, created lots of difficulty for pump stations to operate, and it really pointed out to some of the needs for backup power supply systems. Hurricane Irene, Tropical Storm Lee was really a water quality issue, which caused New York City to make really drastic changes in how we operate our system and divert water from any number of our 19 reservoirs and 3 controlled lakes. Then, in going back in time, we have a drought period in 2001, 2002. During the 1990s, we had about 5 periods of drought warning, 1 drought emergency. The 1980s, we had again about 5 periods of drought warning, 2 drought emergencies. And then in between 1961 and 1967, when those plots began, was our main drought of record. Moving on to New York City's water demand management program. Now, this is our in-city program, and this is something similar that we would roll out and make available to the Village of Ossining. And some of these initiatives may be or may not be the best choice for you. But the best part about our plan and our process is that it's all inclusive with the decision makers of the village. And so that you would be at the table discussing different initiatives as we came up with the suggestions and really guide which ones you thought might be most applicable towards your system. So New York City, for our in-city plan, we have our 5% or 50 million gallon per day goal for reduction by 2019. And we have really 5 key initiatives which work that out. So we have a municipal water efficiency, which would include retrofitting city-owned properties. That's a revenue-neutral program, since typically our city properties are billed at a fixed rate, and it's very revenue-neutral from our perspective. Residential initiatives, like the conventional toilet replacement program, that really looks to address the 1 million people that are in public housing in New York City. So it's a very huge number, and we think we can get really fantastic savings out of that program. Then we would look at non-residential savings, collaborations with private sector organizations, hotels, restaurants. We do those as a series of challenges to particular water sectors. We had a really successful hotel water challenge, and that was very instrumental in saving water across the hotel. And actually, the United States EPA liked that program so much that they modeled after it and had really networked out and done outreach to make that a national program. We currently also have a restaurant challenge program, and as I was mentioning to Anthony, as we got some pizza before here, you know, residential, rather commercial buildings and restaurants can be really large users of water, particularly just on their fixture use. It might not only be sink use, but it might just be the increased usage that their restrooms get because there's so many people going through and in and out. So these are some really efforts that we've looked to target at and make for a successful program. The last 2 bullets speak to our water supply system optimization, and that really differs and defines water demand management versus water conservation. So we look at system losses in our own system. We have active leak detection. We have active programs that not only listen for leaks with microphones out on the street, but we're actually monitoring individual customers' bills on a daily basis. We get upwards of 4 readings per day through our advanced metering infrastructure on an individual customer's meter. And so we're able to identify their usage patterns and really define a normal condition and then let them know with an alert system when it leaves or departs from that normal condition. And then lastly, we'll be reviewing and revising plans for water shortages and dealing with water shortages from drought or from infrastructure upgrades. I would believe that the Village of Ossining subscribes to Westchester County's water shortage plan. It's a county-wide plan. And you know, we believe that this will be the lead for water shortage management, and then that would follow in the near term. The county would revise their plan as well. On to our wholesale water efficiency program. So this program is what we're here to talk about today most specifically. It offers assistance to our 10 largest wholesale customers looking to get that same 5% reduction in water consumption overall. So here again, we have a plot why water demand management, especially in this plot's case, we had a 17% drop in use in city from 2001 to 2013, yet we only had a 12% drop in use on our wholesale sector from 2001 to 2013. So we realized that the difference between the drops is an ideal sector for maybe some customer engagement and maybe some outreach programs that we can see why isn't the wholesale sector declining at the same rate as the in-city sector. Does it need some assistance in planning? Does it need some assistance in implementation? Why are those needs? A little bit more about our overall wholesale footprint. On the left side, you'll see our plot of our water demand projections. Across our whole wholesale sector, we expect about a 20% growth in water usage over the next 20 years, next 30 years from 2010 to 2040. Currently, that wholesale sector uses about 110 million gallons a day on average. It was about 3 million gallons a day, just under that for the village of Ossining in 2014. And then on the left side, the right side, you'll see just a map of our entire footprint for our wholesale sector. On to the demand management program specifically. So it's a two-phase program that we envision. There's planning assistance and then an implementation assistance program. The first step would be that the village signs up with New York City Water Board, signs a customer assistance agreement, and that makes available New York City's water demand management consultant, Peter Mayer, from the firm Water DM. He's an expert in the field of water demand management based in Aurora, Colorado. And those plans, on average, on the street value is about $70,000. So that we're willing to make available to the village at no cost. We'll bear that cost fully. It does require some small input of time from water board and water department personnel to be able to share data, to make available some of the system information, water system profiling. And the time frame to do that is up to 1 year. We'd actually like to get it done probably in the next 6 months would be really our goal, would be to, if you choose to sign on, would be to sign on and complete the plan in the next 6 months. Phase 2 is the implementation assistance program. So for the consumption and on the size of the village of Ossining, we're willing to, once we get a plan and approved measures, to cost share upwards of $280,000 for different demand management measures that have been identified in the plan. And that would be about 3 years to implement that program. So what does a demand management plan template look like? You should have a document like this in your packets. I'm sure if they got those. So this is the plan template. I'm not sure if they
I don't know if we have this,
I don't
or
know
we have
about it.
this.
Did they make it into this packet? Okay. Okay. So we do have a plan template. I can leave a couple copies available for you. And I'm going to step through it. This is the outline of what the plan is. It would include, naturally, an introduction. There's an acceptance letter. That's a municipal official. Most likely the mayor would sign that. And that's, promotes a high-level buy-in of the plan and acceptance of the plan by the municipality and endorsing its usage. Maybe there'd be a resolution or a public hearing to review it and codify the findings of the plan. Next step would be developing a water system profile, getting to know your system and your customers. We would go through and look at your water supply facilities and your attributed demand, look at the service area characteristics, what types of customers, how many of each class, the types of use that they have, what your rate structures look like in the pricing tiers. What's the annual and average daily water use characterized by above? What kind of master meters, if you have smaller zones within your pressure zones that are broken into different meters without, if you have lots of imports and exports going across your municipalities. And then finally, we would complete that whole water system profile with what's known as an AWWA M36 water audit. And that really looks at all the water that you buy, all the water that you produce, and then all of the water that you sell. And it just really does a balance of those factors, puts in some of the financial costs, and really determines what your losses are versus ideal characteristics across nationally and internationally approved norms. Next step would be to develop a water conservation goal. We'd want to hear about what kind of past conservation efforts you've done, brainstorm some new efforts, and really come up with some ideas that might take us to the 5% reduction in consumption. Next part would be evaluation and proposal of water conservation measures. So this is our menu of options. You know, this is where we really would want to get into a couple, we'd want to list maybe 10 different options and then look at different combinations of and see how you can get to a goal. And this is really where it is very much a collaborative process and very much seeking your input as the village. You know your system best, you know what might work and what might not work in terms of different programs that you've tried to implement in the past. And so, you know, we would look to your lead for developing the right combination of options for your plan. Lastly, we would come up with an implementation plan that would include a detailed schedule and budget for the implementation and the estimated water that might be saved. And then some means to monitor and evaluate how well that plan has worked out. So timeline and partners. So we're looking to sign the customer assistance agreement in April. That'd be great. If it takes a little bit longer, we're okay with that. It's a voluntary program, as I mentioned. It's also voluntary from the standpoint where if you get to the end of the planning process and you're not interested in committing to any implementation measures, it's, you know, a fine break in time at that point as well. So we do think that the implementation assistance is nice, and having the plan also promotes the ability to seek funding from other third-party sources as well. So from April to July, we would want to really work on the plan and get that completed. In August, we could be signing an agreement for phase 2 on implementation, and then from 2016 through 2018, we'd be rolling out the plan timeline. Some of our other partners that we're working at, the town of New Windsor, which is in Orange County, the village of Scarsdale, Westchester Joint Waterworks, the city of Mount Vernon, and town of Greenberg. So we all have, those are all currently municipalities that have signed up and have an actively developed or developing plan. We have draft plans for town of New Windsor, Westchester Joint Waterworks, and city of Mount Vernon. And then village of Scarsdale and town of Greenberg are lagging a little bit behind it. And we're advancing additional partnerships with Westchester County, which would include White Plains. There's the large Westchester County Water District #1, which serves White Plains, Scarsdale, Mount Vernon, and Yonkers. The city of Yonkers, that is actually the #1 customer overall for New York City's wholesale sector. The town of Newcastle, United Water of Westchester, which is a newly formed entity that incorporates United Water of New Rochelle and United Water of Westchester. It serves mostly eastern Westchester, southeastern Westchester. And then lastly, yourselves, the village of Ossining. We'd love to advance a partnership with you. That's all. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd certainly love to answer them.
I just want to make sure that I understand. It sounded like we could very soon sign potentially a demand management agreement, and that would cost. Thanks, John. Wow, you're really looking out for me today, John. Thank you.
Got your back.
Okay. We could very soon sign a demand management agreement, which you would bear the cost of that, and the village would just benefit from working with you and learning more about.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But then the next level of that, the implementation program, it indicated it was an estimated or anticipated cost of about $280,000.
No, that's a funding target that New York City would cost share and provide to the village of Ossining. You know, we can't guarantee that measures identified in the plan would be $280,000 or less. So
I'm just wondering, what does the cost share mean?
the cost share means we would give you that $280,000,
Really?
and you would have to obviously do work under contract to develop some of the implementation measures identified. If, for example, it was a measure that cost $280,000, we would pay for it, and you would certify that it was done, and then we would all be happier for it. If it was a measure that cost $500,000, we would contribute $280,000. You would have to make up the difference.
Okay. And then, and you're going to provide us with the report, the implementation plan. It's gonna
Absolutely. It'd be a jointly
indicate
owned
you could do
report
the-
by both the Village of Austining and the New York City Water Board.
So, but what you're suggesting is then there'll be 10 things on the list perhaps, and you'll be able to identify what would be the cost associated, what would be the benefit associated, and we'll be able to select from there which ones we want to move forward with
Yes.
to get the most
absolutely.
bang for our buck, or for your buck, for that
Yes.
matter. Yes. Okay. Thanks.
You got it. Sure. And the customer assistance agreement is a legal document. We did present that in the meeting that Richard mentioned previously, so I believe your legal team may or may not have taken a look at it so far, so.
I'm seeing a not yet.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
I actually took yours. Sorry. We like to stay.
It looked like under some of the possible recommendations, it seemed pretty sweeping in terms of the types of things that you'd be willing to spend the money on, anything from, well, really helping us out with infrastructure, like one of the things I noted was the metering, that sort of thing. And it seems like the work that you've done in New York City has made it possible for you to really drive a lot of data that you're able to analyze. And obviously, the more you know, the better decisions you can make.
That's very true.
So, I mean, would it be possible if we do the study and we find that we need more help with our infrastructure in terms of the metering and stuff like that, that's something that you would be willing to help us invest in, or?
Metering is something that we can't commit to right at this particular juncture. That's been, an internal discussion, and we haven't funded metering, and we believe it's a best practice to implement, and we believe that it may be one of the greatest reasons for reductions in water demand, but we're not prepared to fund metering programs themselves right now. We would hope that you already have them well intact, but not going to close the door, but I can't commit to it right now.
Yeah, the thing I got from what New York City has done is that, not only have you put programs together to get people to reduce their use of water by having them, obviously the toilet program is huge, but it sounds like you've really invested a lot of money in your infrastructure to be able to really see where the water's going, where it's being used, where the volumes change. You can really create a whole analysis of the use of water down to the individual user.
That's very true, but I think you'd be surprised at the quality of the data that most day-to-day water utilities can produce on their own systems as well, from certainly on an annual basis and even a monthly or quarterly basis. It starts to get into, and that's one of the recommendations that we have looked at, is maybe a switch from a quarterly billing strategy to a monthly billing strategy, and what it would take to look at that. We've looked at some different customer engagement potential solutions where you might pair your billing information with third-party providers. These work very well in the residential sector, where third-party providers will analyze big data that's publicly available, things like lot size, things like the median values of the homes in the areas, things like weather patterns, and they might compare that and develop an idealized use, and then they really use social marketing campaigns to address what the ideal user would use in your neighborhood, and what maybe somebody that would be a more excessive user, and maybe somebody that would be a more efficient user, and they sort of categorize them and give them, fancy names that connotate, too much use versus too little use, and it plays upon our psychology to.
So is that something
affects
you'd be
change.
willing to invest in Austining? Is that?
Yes, that's a program that we've absolutely looked at. We've
So
looked at
that's really a way of-
regionalizing that program.
That's really a way of public outreach.
Yes, it is.
So education is something that you obviously feel is important as well.
Yes.
So, on
So
the
the
face.
best answer is to say whatever we approve in the plan, and you approve in the plan, is what
Right.
we would then be willing to fund.
Yeah, on the face of it, I think it's a great idea. I don't think we lose anything by doing this. It is Andy's time. Andy brought you here, so he's obviously interested in doing the engagement. He believes there's value here, so I would support this kind of a project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, and actually thank you, Bill. That was a pretty informative presentation with a lot of data. Thank you, John.
On a roll today.
It's on a roll. Thank you again. But thank you. And I agree with John. I think this is a great program. You also said, you did mention that if we don't like it, we don't have to move option 2, I guess, after
Yes, the
second
implementation
the
program.
implementation, we
both,
don't
both
have to.
programs are,
Yeah.
are strictly voluntary,
Yeah.
and there's convenient stopping points along the way where if you get through the plan and you don't find any implementations to your liking, or if the funding suite of options is not particularly to your liking, then we do allow you to part ways and not pursue it further.
Now, you also, you brought up, if you go back to, I guess, to the previous slides, when you actually, the partners portion, does any of those municipalities, and I know you said some of them are a little bit slow on the process, but has anyone gone to the next step to analyze what are the changes and how much money will they be investing at some point?
We have some draft plans with the town of New Windsor, Westchester Joint Waterworks, and the city of Mount Vernon.
So that's the stage 1, so to speak. So they're going to go to the next level.
Yeah, we haven't entered any implementation
Okay.
assistance agreements yet. And although we were close, we started to have those agreements put through our legal shop for drafting and make sure that they're in line, and we're getting very close. We have our budgetary requests in line. So we are close to that. And we do have some initial figures on those other municipalities in terms of, what it looked like in terms of a cost basis and what it looked like in terms of an ability to meet the goal. And in all the cases, they do find measures that would reach the goal.
So nothing more than $280,000?
Well, it's different for each of those because
Yeah,
it's
no,
a
no,
different sized
No, of course.
system, and it's come out, I would say, in many cases, so it's close to the funding match, but the funding matches might be a little bit less, so it is
Okay.
truly a cost share
Okay.
type situation.
Yes. I just wanted to say, I think what's great about this program is that we have the ability, after we get a study that we could gain information from and knowledge from when it comes to our particular infrastructure here in Ossining, but also what you said just now just answered my question was that we would then, once we have the implementation options, whether they're at or below or more than the $280,000, that we could pick and choose which area we would like to implement, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Great. Andy, before we move on to the next topic, do you want to comment on this? I know you've been integrally involved in bringing Bill Richardson here with us this evening.
I just appreciate them being here tonight. It's a step in the right direction. We know that we're constantly trying to tighten up our system as far as system losses. Sometimes we average, some years we've been as low as 15% on the system loss, and some years we've been as high as 23-24%. So,
That's a lot better than the 40 that was given as the
Absolutely.
example. So thank you for clarifying.
and I Googled this, and there's some communities that are as high as 75%. They
Oh my
must not
gosh.
be purchasing their water. So, but I think we should move forward as soon as possible with this, and I think we're going to find out quite a bit of information that we can handle right away.
So then, I guess we turn it over to this side of the table. Richard or Lori Lee, what would be the next steps for us? Because it seems there's a sense on the board that we'd like to move forward.
So I guess if there's a sense, then their draft documents, council can start to review them. And then if it's, as soon as it's prepared, I'll turn it to Lori, but I would assume you'd put it on for our agenda for approval.
Sure. Actually, most of the resolutions we draft they don't mandate you to sign anything. They authorize you to sign something pending approval. So if you'd like to get this moving, we could put a resolution on, a draft resolution for your consideration next week that would authorize a signature pending my approval, review and approval of the actual document itself. So I'd be happy to do that if you're interested in moving that.
That sounds good. That's what I'm hearing from everyone, right? Does that sound good, Andy?
good.
Excellent.
All right, thank you. So next week. Thanks.
And someone will get me the document?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you do? Great. You can email it to me? Oh, great. Thank you.
Great.
Can we get a copy too, Valerie?
Great.
I just have one last question, Mr. Richardson. When there's all right, so in the beginning of the agreement, which starts the whole study, that's one agreement that we're committing ourselves to complete the study, and then we then sign that we accept implementations. I just want to make sure that, at no point are we binding ourselves to do anything that we don't want to.
It would be two separate agreements. The first agreement is between the New York City Water Board, which is essentially New York City's funding arm, and it handles our revenue collections and our system management on a financial basis for the water system. So that's who hired the water board, the water demand management consultant. And so that's the first agreement was with our water board. The second agreement would be an intergovernmental agreement with New York City DEP or New York City itself. And that would be, a separate funding agreement that would list out the different schedule and budget items and milestones that you're agreeing to complete with that. And so once if you committed to that, typically in other intergovernmental agreements, we typically have a walk-away clause if you're so inclined. So it's there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for coming in this evening. That was very, very informative and helpful, as it was when we met previously. And it's sort of good timing because the village has engaged the firm of Hazen and Sawyer to look at village resources and water resources and the future of the village's water supply as it looks to the next 30, 50 years. So turn it over to Andy as well, and he can update you with where we are today.
Okay, thank you again. Tonight we have with us the second part of our presentation from the Hazen Sawyer Environmental Engineering Firm, Michael Broder and Julie Hersner, senior engineers, principals. They were hired by the village through an RFP process last year for our water demand study. This was looked at back in as far back as 2007, and we really started moving this priority up in the last couple of years. Hazen Sawyer is going to go through their actual study. I'll probably jump in for some of the questions and fill in some of the blanks, but it's worked out really well.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Board.
Good evening.
To speak tonight, the first task we've completed for the village of Ossining is looking at the demand projections of the village going into the future. It is a good segue to Mr. Richardson's presentation right here. Similar to what you saw as projecting the demands of the city, this study projects the demands of the village. So speaking tonight, looking at the historical data and the demands that we have seen, doing the projections into the future using various methods, and really getting into what are the next steps to address the needs of the village for an expanded water supply, and also meeting the regulations necessary to provide that water to the consumers. So I'd like Julie Hersner to speak. Julie is our manager for the project with the village, and she'll speak to the demand study we've completed.
Thanks, Mike. So as Mike was saying, this is an outline of this presentation tonight. We were given data from the village to look at historical demands, and we looked at them two different ways. One approach was to look at it based on about a 10-year period, at looking at the water production at the plant and then projecting out using that data. And then another way to look at it was to look at the development that's been seen in the community over the last 5 years, and then to project out using development-based trends. And then we look at comparing the two methods, and finally, after making some decisions based on that comparison, we looked at existing data for determining seasonal peaks throughout the year and what that means in the future. And then we'll finish up just talking about next steps. I should have asked how to advance. Is it just that? Okay, there we go. Got it. So as I mentioned, the village gave us data from 2002 through the last full year of data we had was for 2013. And you can see the monthly average demands on this figure here. So, it kind of changes over time. There's a lot of things that affect demand. Some of them a little bit more obvious than others. Weather, the temperatures in the summer, precipitation, land use, water rates, and obviously population changes. So here you can see, and I have a figure that probably shows it a little better, but from 2002 to 2007, there was a drop in demand use. And then from 2008 through 2014, we see a steady increase in the use or the water production at the plant. So We looked at that data and we tried to analyze it by doing some regression analysis and looking at fitting lines to the data. So you can kind of see the line fit from 2002 through 2007, and then also from 2008 through 2014. There's two definite breaks in decreasing demand and then increasing demand. So we then tried to look at reasons for why there could be this shift in 2007. And we did look at temperature, precipitation data, and the population data wasn't that informative for this time period. And we realized with the amount of external data we had, we couldn't make a correlation for what this shift, why we were seeing the shift. We looked at the data another way. This is annual average flow data. So the last one was monthly averages. And, you could see the same trends based on looking at the annual averages. I want to point out here that in 2013, the last full year of data we had, there was an annual average of 3.76 mg/day for 2013. So, we decided to take a look at it in another way as well. We understand that there's been development in the village of Ossining, and the village supplied information to us based on the different construction projects that were either, in planning or construction phase. And we kind of looked at what that would mean to water demand increases. Before I go on to that, I'm sorry, I wanted to give you the projection. So when we looked at the data from 2008 through 2014, and we looked at the trend analysis, we took that data, and you can see the last point there about 2014, the blue points, and we projected out from that period, moving 5 years ahead, then 10 years, 15, 20, and then 25. I'd like to mention we had about 10 years of data, and so when you do these types of projections, they're more accurate for the amount of time you've had data. So, 10 years out is more accurate than 25 years out. Again, pointing out that we were having difficulty in explaining what was causing this increase in the 2008 through 2014 time period. This is when we moved on to look at the development-based projections. So this is the data that was supplied by the village. This is the data as of 2014. We have Town of Ossining and Village of Ossining data, so you can see the project names on the left, and then the column next to that will show, the number of units proposed, whether it's in the construction or approved, and then some data on, whether it's condo, single family, and the number of rooms, and the same for the village here. And this is important because we can make predictions based on statistical information that's collected, and standards have been set in New York State, and we use the 2014 standards based on water use. And you probably notice at the top of this table, water use is shown here as wastewater treatment systems, and that's to capture all water use. So, all the water coming into a home or a restaurant will wind up actually going out to a wastewater treatment plant. So if you look here, you can see the various uses and the assumed gallons per day. So an apartment, assumed gallons per day would be 150 gallons per day of use versus a single family home, which would be 600 gallons per day. And then using those standards, you can look at your development and determine what the calculated demands would be based on that development, which we did for all of these projects, and it came out to about 300,000 gallons per day. And when we talk about the water treatment plant capacity, we're talking in million gallons per day. So we're also showing that that demand there is 0.3 million gallons per day, and that was for about a 5-year period. I'll show you how we use that projection in the next slide. But I mentioned earlier in 2013 that the annual average demand was 3.76. If we add this 0.3 onto that, that's 4.1 mg/day. So here's a table summarizing the projections using development-based trend analysis, and you can see, in 5 years, the projected annual average demand would be 4.1, and then up to 25 years where it would be 5.3. This is assuming the same type of growth would be seen in each one of these 5-year increments. So we compared the two approaches. The red line on top is the statistical approach, where we had looked at the plant production and projected it out 25 years. And then the lower gray line is the demand-based approach. And given the information we had and the inability to determine what caused that shift in use in 2008, we feel that the development-based projections are more realistic to look at when trying to plan how water demand will increase over the next 25 years.
I'm sorry, I just blanked for 1 second. You said you think that the statistics-based is the wiser one, the
development-based
development-based?
seems more
is-
realistic. We don't have a handle on what that change was a result of.
Okay.
So without being able to correlate it to, precipitation or weather or any other type of event, and the population data isn't necessarily supporting it, it seems that the development-based analysis would be more. Sure.
There were so many different variables in those years back in 2007. When I took over in 2005, the village purchased almost $1 million a year worth of water off of Newcastle. So you'll see like the water production out of the plant went down quite a bit. So we were able to increase the efficiency of the plant. We were able to sell water to Briarcliff. And Briarcliff had major issues with their water system at that time. They were purchasing like 150,000 gallons a day for months on end. So there's a lot of different variables. I just wanted to say that because you can't, just point to one individual thing.
And then the last piece of this I mentioned earlier is the peaking factors. So, there's a lot of data here on this figure. You can see it's showing monthly peaking factors for 2002 through 2013, and then the red line is the average. But basically, you can see the months along the bottom, and it's not, it's obvious that in the summer you would have your peak demand use, and you can see right there at 7 in July, you're having the maximum use of the water. And so, if you think back to the demand I showed before, the 3.76 is an average, and you multiply, the 1.1 peaking factor onto it, you can see what Andy, has to deal with in the summertime when he's trying to put out max demands. And, so this peaking factor should be added onto any of the projections moving forward. So we can see here, this layers in the peaking factor. So we see the projected annual average demands here for the next 25 years using the development-based trend analysis. And then you see the column all the way to the right with the projected peak monthly averages. So in 25 years, it looks like the projected peak monthly average would be 5.8 MGD. And, 5 years out, it would be 4.5 MGD. And I'll mention now that, it was come to our attention during this project that the plant was originally designed as a 4 MGD water treatment plant. So, the next steps, I wanted to talk a little bit about what this does mean for the Indian Brook water treatment plant. The first bullet here, you were talking about the surface water treatment rule, and we're only showing here focusing on one of the parameters that is regulated among others, but you can see this is for turbidity, which is a measurement of particles in the water, the amount of cloudiness in the water. And the plant came online in about 1983, before the surface water treatment rule was even in effect, which came into effect 1986, and the turbidity regulatory standard was 1 NTU. And you can kind of see how it's changed over the years. In 1993, that reduced to 0.5, and then in 2006, it decreased again to 0.3. And this would be the measurement that would be needed off of the filters in the water treatment plant. So, those standards keep on getting more stringent, as well as other water quality standards that the plant needs to meet. We've currently been also working on a facility status review of the Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant. The plant's being very well maintained, but the existing structure being designed for 4MGD has its limitations in the actual, basin sizes. So we've been looking at it at various, capacities. And 5.8, we've done an assessment at that, and the basins are undersized as you walk through the plant and you look at each individual process for treating the water in the plant. I'm going to let Mike Broder talk about this last slide here.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, we've gone through and done the demand study looking at the future needs of the village, for a water supply. And looking at the steps to actually meet the needs of the village have to do with both the increased water demand, how to achieve that, and also how to meet the regulations currently and the ones that are, coming down the pipeline. Julie spoke to things like capacity and peaking factor. I mean, one way to think about it is you do not design a plant or run a plant based on an average demand, because the water has to flow 24 hours a day. So you have peaks during a month, you have peaks during a day. And one thing we have not spoken about are things like a peak day. And that's where other things come into effect, like the system storage, the tanks the village has, and how that sort of levels out the demands over the course of a day. So again, looking at the overall usage of water and demand, it's the study that has just been completed. Looking at the tankage and the facility assessment, which is currently ongoing. Sounds pretty obvious, it's a 4MGD plant. It's hydraulically limited in how much water you can actually get through it. And there's also limitations at the higher flows. It cannot treat that water at the higher flow rates with the processes that exist. So to make up the additional water the village will need in the future, the obvious ones Andy spoke about, the connections you have to the town of Newcastle, Briarcliff Manor. Could they be used as a possible method to make up demand? That's one option. It's usually good to have something like that on an emergency basis where the different municipalities can support each other for needs. Looking at it long term, it usually does not work out, because the time you need the most water is probably July and August, and that's when they need the water too. So there are limitations to that, and we're familiar with many of these systems and how they're interconnected, and that's one thing we look at. Part of the facility assessment plan is also looking at what can be done to optimize the existing treatment plant. Are there some things or modifications that can be done to keep it producing enough water at the required quality, for a period of time. But looking at the overall demand, projecting out many years, that probably cannot meet those demands. You can say with a fact it can't. It's just too small a plant. So looking at the short term, what can be done to keep it operating and meeting regulations. Looking at the longer term, what can be done, constructing additional treatment facilities adjacent to the plant, replacing certain things, using as much of the existing infrastructure as possible. There's a lot of sunk costs there that could be rolled into a new facility or new treatment processes. So these are things we'll be looking at in the next step about, how to meet the needs of the village for what we see as the needs of the water in the future and the amount of water you're going to need. Okay.
Thank you. Great presentation, Andy. Again, thank you so much. We have $280,000 that New York City is going to give us at some point, so I think we can utilize that. I do have a quick question, though. Going back to the presentation itself, I guess if you want to go back to slide 12, page 12 that I have in here, in regards to the calculation to demand for water, the one-bedroom apartment, two-bedroom apartment, and the one single-family house, how did you get those numbers? And I guess on the page 11, on the single-family house is 600 gallons per day for assuming a four-bedroom apartment or four-bedroom house, and the apartment is 150. So I wasn't sure how does those numbers get calculated in the average.
Table here, where do these numbers come from?
Yeah, well, no. If you go to based on those numbers, I'm assuming page 12 is the average through the year, sure? So I wasn't sure how does the apartment compare to the one single-family house? It has that affected, I guess. So I was a little confused.
Yeah, I understand your question you're asking. The one-bedroom apartments, what I did was I went through both the town of Austin and the village of Austin, and we went through
Okay.
the current development projects. And so I provided them information on how many one-bedroom apartments were being created, how many two-bedroom, how many three-bedrooms. So therefore, then they multiplied the standards by
So the 150 by the number of the
Right,
apartments, and you get
right,
the, okay.
exactly.
All right, because the other way, it wasn't making any
Right.
sense to me. Okay, I understand that. That's what I got so far.
Can I ask a question? I actually
Yeah.
don't understand. In that, why are you showing the single family at 35,000 and the one-bedroom apartment at 44,000?
Well, again, these numbers are multiplied by the number of those types of
Oh, that's for the
units.
total number of
It's the total
apartments. Okay,
number,
gotcha,
right.
okay.
Yeah, otherwise you
Got
look
it.
at one-bedroom apartment, 44, and two-bedroom at 119, and it's like, it's not, yeah.
Right.
There's just more two-bedroom apartments. Yeah.
Did you have a question, Trustee Herrera? You seem to be looking
Yeah,
at me.
I did. I was actually taking a lot of notes because even if our population stayed the same for a couple of years, we would still be having this conversation to meet our water demand. Because from what I mean, my numbers may be a little off because I did it pretty quick on my calculator, but mainly because we have 904 new units coming to the village, 184 constructed to date, and 720 that are being constructed. That's kind of why, right, we have to accommodate our new, all our new development that's been approved and going through the process, and that's
Using,
the
yeah.
main reason, right, for the,
Well, it's part of the reason, but I mean, part of the reason is that the plant is at its near its peak flow right now, what it was designed for, and everything kind of, it's the aggregate of everything that adds to it. You know, was mentioned, the water quality standards changed, so you know, the engineers are looking at 10 state standards of detention times, what can go through the tanks, how fast it would go through, the log removals, the disinfection, and they say on best practices, what it can handle. There's so many different factors. Development does affect it, but there's so many different factors. There's also, like, 2 weeks ago, we caught a leak that was 200,000 gallons a day. You know, a leak that we did not know that was there. It was going into an underwater source. There's so many factors. Last year we had a break that was 1 million gallons a day. It took us, everybody knows how stressed out I was. It took us like 5 weeks to find. So with leak detection, and if that situation happens at a perfect storm in the summertime, in 100-degree day and like 5 90-degree days, and there's no precipitation for 2 weeks, we reach our peak demand for the day, what the plant can actually put out. And if our system storage tanks can't make up that difference, we're going to be pumping more water than or less water than what's being used. So there's a bunch of factors.
I was asking because if that's the case, I'm a little concerned with us being able to accommodate what's yet to be constructed. That's just my concern, but thank you.
And I think when we put these projections together, I mean, that's why we're bringing this here now, because all these developments are going to take a number of years in order to actually become developed. But not only that, but we have to remember, not only is it the village of Ossining, but we also have the town of Ossining too, so we have to look at future growth in both areas. And so I think that's why, when we looked at this, that's why we're starting this now, with the assumption that, we continue down, progressing through this project, then ultimately the two will come together at pretty much the same time.
I'm wondering I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Julie, thank you. When you're looking at your anticipation, I know one of the big factors was just development, but the scenario that Andy just presented to us, where we have a 100-degree day followed by 5 90-degree days, we are seeing more extreme weather patterns. This winter is a good example of an extreme weather pattern, and there will be more frequent and lengthier stretches of heat waves and droughts. So is that also one of the factors that you're considering in our increasing demand, regardless of, independent of the development?
We have, a kind of a report that we put together, and one of the things we did look at it was adding on a factor for a leak in the system, a large leak in the system to help make these projections. I mean, this is just looking at development-based versus a statistical base, but we had a couple of other factors in and looking at numbers in a bunch of different ways to, finally make decisions. So that is something we had looked at.
My question actually wasn't referring to the leak scenario,
Okay.
but what climate scientists have told us about weather patterns and more extreme weather patterns. And when we have these heat waves, demand goes up significantly. It's not just a summer day, it's the fifth 95-degree day. And so the amount of water, it's just that much more taxing. Is that one of your considerations?
It's a consideration and when trying to make these decisions, but there's nothing actually factored into any of these projections that you see that would be kind of a factor that took that into consideration.
Really?
That, yeah.
Okay.
There's, go ahead.
Just operationally, we look at that all the time because our safe yield of our reservoir is about 1.2 million gallons per day. So, in fact, 3 years ago, before we retrofitted our low lift station, we had to wire up all 3 pumps, purchase 4 million gallons per day from New York City to just meet our demand. Our reservoir kept going down. The safe yield, it was really hot. It was a couple of week period, and it was one of those unusual situations where we didn't know if how low our reservoir would get. So that's part of also that's why it's key that both parties are here. It's definitely clear that we're going to need to purchase more water from New York City in the future. And with that said, how can we ask them for more water without trying to conserve on the other part too? So it's like kind of it all rolls together.
Yeah. Just to expand a little bit, climate change and, the effect of temperature. North of the city or outside users, the temperature does affect things like irrigation usages, whether it's a golf course, private homes, municipal properties, more so on a per capita basis than within the city itself. When you think about those temperature changes, population really doesn't have that much of an effect unless you're developing and creating new housing, new areas to irrigate. People might be drinking a little bit more water, during hot days, but that's not going to affect the overall demand. So Julie's description here about looking at the peaking factor, and we're using the latest year of data we have of 2013, looking at those summer months, it pops right out. Those are obviously the highest demand months for that. When we look at a peaking factor like this and we sit down and, do a design and come up, you obviously never design right to the number. I mean, there has to be some type of factor in there that's comfortable, conservative, for the user, for the municipality, because any solution here cannot be performed overnight. Not many of the things we're looking at would take years to develop, and the thing is to stay ahead. So, basically you don't run out of water in the emergency situations. How can you optimize what you have to keep it going as you bring new things online? And,
Okay.
Build the infrastructure.
This is pretty in-depth, but I think, Trustee Codman, you had a question, right?
Yeah, so right now the plant obviously can only deliver so much water, because it only has so much capacity, right? So, it's at some point the plant will have to deliver more water than it's designed to deliver now, and that's not going to happen immediately, but it's going to happen over time. So, and obviously, what's not factored in here is climate changes, whatever those things might be. So I guess from my concern is, what are the things that need to be done strategically, over the next 5 to 10 years that will be able to make, our water system deliver the water that's necessary to obviously meet the demand that we project, the demand that we're going to have, near term with the new development that's coming in and everything else. I happen to think that development's not infinite. I think we're pretty thickly settled here. I think that there is a sort of a limit to the amount of water that will be used. The statistical model, I think, is pretty unrealistic. I don't think we'll ever be using that much water unless we have some real problems with our water system. But obviously the development-based model has some merit because those are real things and real projects that are happening. So I guess my answer, I like the analysis. I don't like what you've done. I don't know how we're going to do in 2039, getting up to 5.8. I guess that's million gallons per day out of a plant that's rated to do half that, probably. So I'd want to understand, how do we make that happen? What are the things that we need to do tactically to make it happen? I'm assuming you're coming to us with this to show us that we need to make those infrastructure improvements. So.
That's correct.
Yeah, so essentially, Hazen and Sawyer will, the next steps which we have, that we saw in the program, they'll be finishing the on-site assessment of the filtration plant, look at exactly where there's weaknesses, what we can actually do with the filtration plant. They're going to be looking at interconnections that we talked about. They're going to be looking at, does it make sense to get water from ground sources? I've given them all the information, and they've analyzed information of how the treatment plant operates and the water quality it puts out at different flow rates. So they're going to look at 10 states. If the plant was designed for 4 MGD, I've run the plant as high as 5.2 MGD, but that's only been under certain scenarios under good quality water. So they have to look at the weather climate. They need to look at turbidity events. They need to look at really dry summers, and they need to look at everything. There's so many different variables, but they're going to be tasked to come back to us and give us options of like what we're going to do at Indian Brook. Are we going to do anything at Chef 4? Are we going to buy off another municipality? And also what they feel comfortable with, based on if the plant's designed for 4 MGD, what is the best flow rate we should run that plant at in the future if we're going to have some type of a hybrid system, so that we meet the regulations.
So you really want to fully optimize the current plant, find out what that number is, and obviously, as you mentioned, you have to be conservative. You can't just you can't build to that number because you need that cushion. You need that cushion to be able to deal with unexpected events that could cause any number of things. There's the water quality, there's drought, there's any number of different events that are taking place. So.
And it's also, I had asked them, what's the timetable? If we had approval, if we had the exact answer tomorrow, what would it take to get all the approvals through New York City, through the health department, their design, their pilot testing, putting water out the door at a finished plant would be 5 years. That's why we're starting the process
right.
now.
Yeah. No, that seems pretty clear that we got to start. Got to start now. So.
Julie, since we have all of these, terrific experts here, I just want to ask one question or sort of comment on. I'm not going to speculate on why we have this sort of unexplainable demand increase, which coincidentally with the crash of the market, and how that may have impacted it. But I would like to ask Bill, do you ever include in your recommendations the potential for tiered pricing of water, so that if households are going beyond the anticipated usage for households, or they might pay a higher rate for those gallons, is that ever included in the recommendations that you do for conservation?
If you could just step up to the mic,
sorry.
that'd be great. Thank you.
I know you're jumping back up, but thanks.
So yes, so if the water demand management consultant felt that your pricing tier would benefit by a tiered structure, and that would benefit your demand overall, then that would certainly be a recommendation that we could make. New York City has a tiered rate structure, certainly for its wholesale sector, and there are a number of customers in this region that have tiered rate structures currently, so it's something that's getting more and more widespread use.
Great, thank you.
I mean, one of the other variables that I don't think you probably considered in this is conservation. I mean, I don't know whether you considered that as part of, I mean, you kind of look at the worst case scenario, but, if we were to engage in the program that New York City is talking about, we may be able to reduce some of our usage because of the programs that they talked about. I mean, a reduction of 5% is significant, and so that's I think the combination of the planning for the future and conservation. We could only hope that would have a positive impact.
So is there something that, that Andy or Richard, that we need to be doing on our part to move it forward?
With this part of the presentation, no. Hayes and Sawyer needs to complete about 2 or 3 months worth of field work, and once we get a final, we'll meet a few times, and then obviously we'll meet with the board and make a recommendation. But it's an education process. I don't want to come to you guys in 6 months and be like, we need a plant next.
It's been very enlightening. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for coming in this evening to report on those water-related issues. The next item is a discussion on the Affordable Care Act mandates. This is a potential agreement with CPI-HR. It is a company that assists in guaranteeing compliance by municipalities with the Affordable Care and the upcoming requirements for January of 16. So I would ask our Personnel Director, Linda McMahon, if you could come forward and speak to this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening, Linda.
Effective this January, there were new employer mandates that are a part of the Affordable Care Act. And actually, it requires very extensive reporting on the part of the Personnel Department as well as the Finance Office. There are IRS requirements with respect to monthly tracking of employee data. While we know who our full-time employees are, there's also a definition of what constitutes what we believe part-time or seasonal that may not actually translate to actual seasonal or part-time people, and we need to be able to track that so that we can better inform the departments that certain hours need to be constrained to a timetable, because the imposition of violating that creates a penalty for the village in the form of an excessive, shall we say, penalty, in the sense that it's so many thousands per employee, and all of this reporting constitutes a look-back period. So there are so many layers of just employee tracking, not only for hours to establish to make sure that we aren't falsely reporting people as part-time when they may be actually considered full-time under the Affordable Care Act, and that would constitute the requirement to provide them with minimum valuable health insurance coverage, again at a cost to the village. It's also tracking to see if there is a compliance with our plan, which we know it does. It does have absolute compliance. Also, there are forms that will be submitted by the Finance Department for the IRS, and that involves this monthly tracking. So we have to prove that we are in compliance through this tracking, saying all of our employees that are full-time are appropriately designated full-time, and our part-time seasonals are also appropriately designated. On top of that, in addition to the W-2s that we are all getting now that puts a dollar value to our health care, there is also another form that needs to be generated, and this would accompany the W-2, and we will all be receiving it, and it's called a 1095-C. And that's going to outline all of the members that are on our policy, and there's all these check the boxes kind of thing, and that's also going to be used when we all file our income taxes, and that all has to be done effective with the January 2016 W-2s. So this company has come forward and seems to be a wonderful resource to keep us in compliance, because the penalty for non-compliance far outweighs the cost of maintaining them on contract at this point.
they are a resource. There's not only the compliance and tracking issues, there's also policies that need to be written. We need to establish that we have notified our employees that are hired as seasonals and part-timers that they have an option to the marketplace for health insurance, and that the village does provide an affordable option with minimum value coverage, et cetera, et cetera. We have to do all this documentation, and quite frankly, we found out about this merely because this vendor had approached some of the municipalities, and we all started talking because there was no information provided to the personnel departments and to a limited extent to the finance areas. So when we all started talking about this, and it was, well, how do we know what we need to do? And right then and there, you just need to follow the lead of someone who is able to help you, and that's what this company is able to do. They're able to provide us with all of the compliance, from writing the policies to tracking our employees, to also provide us with the assistance, and especially to the finance office. They will produce that IRS form for the finance department to provide it. So bottom line is, this agency is going to help us to be in compliance in areas that we don't even know we are required to be compliant in, and it's just a very scary scenario for non-compliance. The penalties are very large, and it's almost to the point where if we make one mistake, it would be based on, say, a $2,000 fine per full-time employee as a penalty. So it's an extensive penalty if we don't comply. We may very well be in compliance, but we don't know that, and we actually have to prove that we are. So we have a look-back period, we have an administration period, we have many, many segments of this that I don't even pretend to understand fully, even at this point, and this CPI HR is very hands-on. I've spoken to other municipalities who have already engaged them, and they are extremely pleased, and also attempted to find if there were other people out there that could provide the same service. And I really was not successful in finding anyone that could come to the level of assistance that both Tom and I feel very comfortable with, and that is someone to pretty much hold our hand through this so we know we're doing it the right way. And people would be able to provide us maybe with the payroll analysis or the analysis of our full-time and part-time people, but it would not be all the other aspects of it that would make the village withstand an audit, because we're told that they also come through and come to the village and say, okay, you want to audit your procedures with respect to all of this employer mandate. They've actually nicknamed this mandate the employer pay or play. So you either play by the rules or you pay, and that's really how this has become to known if you read about it. And on behalf of Tom and myself, I would really respectfully request that the board grant the authority to engage this company to assist us, and perhaps once we understand it, maybe they won't be necessary futuristically, but for the time being, we are really out of our comfort zone in all of this, and I think it's just important for us to understand when we do need help, and that's what we are requesting.
Linda, thank you. You actually just answered my question there in your last moment, and we certainly, at least I for one, you've made a compelling case for why we should really respect the concerns that you and Tom have raised and your desire to contract with them. And I think it would be tough for me anyway to not support this, because it could put the village in a really difficult position. But the last point that you made is this is a new process.
Yes.
It's the first time you're doing it. We're contracting for them for 1 year
That's
to
correct.
walk us through this process.
Yes.
And so it's, in a best case scenario, next year, once you and Tom and your departments had an opportunity to go through it, then we'll revisit if we now have a template that can be used going forward, so we wouldn't necessarily renew the contract on an annual basis. Is that what you were indicating?
That's what I think we are hoping. Again, I can't speak for Tom exactly, but I do know that at the present time, he does not have the capability of producing some of these IRS forms that are
Okay.
required. And this group is able to provide those on our behalf. They will deliver them to us so that it can be delivered with the W-2s, as well as doing mock audits with us, so we know how to actually handle ourselves when, and we're told that they will happen. I mean, it sounds like it could be just a scare tactic, but this group is actually telling us that they know that they will be, because they've gone down to Washington, they've gone up to Albany, they've gone to a lot of the networking to better understand how enforceable this is all going to be made. And they feel that, bottom line, the compliance or the non-compliance is going to be in their budget, for the federal budget, for paying for it. So they are hoping for non-compliance. That's
We're
what we were
hoping for
told.
compliance, so.
And that's what we were
Couple of
told.
questions. Okay.
All right. Yes, go right ahead, please.
During the meeting with the consultant last week, they also indicated that the first year is at this rate because there's all the data collection, and any subsequent rates, any subsequent fees to this same consultant would be lower because that has already been captured, and then there's a template in place. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but they did indicate that there was there would be a reduction if you would consider them for the following years. It's just this first year is at the $15,000 rate because of the data collection necessary.
Thank you.
And for full disclosure, I cannot guarantee that we won't need them again next year.
Understood.
I'm just saying that
we're not
at least
holding you
at
to
this
that.
point, we know we absolutely positively do. And hopefully moving on from there, we'll feel a little more comfortable, but it still just is an overwhelming process now at this point.
Okay. Good.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So, my understanding is that this is a mandate from the federal government?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And this company that we're going to be engaging in, are they in a position to support us in an audit scenario? If the federal government comes forward and decides they want to pick on the village of Ossining, are they going to step up here and stand with us when we have to go to deal with the regulators?
I was under the impression that that was definitely the case.
I would certainly like to understand that and make that a part of the contract. I mean, or understand implicitly. I mean, it's their integrity. They're the ones gathering supposedly the right data and everything else.
Right. I know they did say that they would walk us through the audit, and they would, familiarize us with the audit process. But I really got the sense that they were definitely in the support role here, that we could pick up the phone at any point and they would have staff assigned to us.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
we will get that.
I think that's great. But I think that it'd be good if we can get a little more out of that. Like if we do get a situation where we get audited, I mean, I'd like to make that part of the contract, or something. Don't we love the unfunded mandates? I guess that's the cost of having health care for everybody in this country. It seems that the way they've rolled this out creates yet another level of bureaucracy that you would think that people would have thought this through in the implementation. I guess I'm saddened by that. We have to use how much? $15,000 of our contingency, which I imagine that's where this is coming from, to pay for this. But that is what it is. So I think we should go forward with a one-year contract. I think we should do the best we can to understand what it is, the reporting we have to do. Let's get inside this. Let's really sponge these people so we understand. If it makes better sense that they just keep doing it going forward, I'd be happy with that too. I'm certainly, if they bring value and they can continue to support us, I think it'd be a good idea.
Christina, did you want to comment on that?
No, that's
Okay.
really just wanted to reiterate that what Linda went over, and they did express that they would walk us through the process and be with us. Similar as if you have an accountant and they do your taxes and you do get audited, they speak on your behalf, and it's with the requirements. I can't imagine that we could do them without a penalty. It's just unbelievable when they describe what you have to do. I think the town's exempt because your size, right? I thought you were because you're less than 50 people. It's it's part-timers. Okay, yeah.
We don't have part-timers. That was when Maddie came down. talked to you about it.
Mhm.
Sort of the Association of Towns, and we don't have the part-timers that you guys have. We have no camp.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
Okay.
Yep. And
Okay.
yes.
So this is
The
really,
recreation
so this is
department.
really about the part-time workers that we have during the summer for other, we have a fairly, right. got
Yes, and that's exactly it. We want to make sure that we can prove that our seasonal and part-time employees are truly seasonal and part-time by their definition, not ours.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yes, first and foremost, just want to say thank you. This is still a mind-boggling, for just every board and municipality across the country. Some are trying to say, how are we going to pay this? How are we going to do it? How are we going to comply? So, despite my own personal feeling on funded mandates, I just wanted to say thank you for just addressing this head-on. What came to me when I thought of this was that because we're not the only one that's going to go through this, is after our first year with this company, it would definitely, I think, be very important if we spoke to other surrounding municipalities and saw how we could start with an inter-municipal agreement. I definitely see an area for, consolidation of services when it comes to using a company. I mean, I have a lot of faith in your office and Tom's as well, but it kind of sounds like it's almost like a whole full-time job just to comply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what they're saying.
And
that
these
it
people are
impacts staffing.
Yeah, they're representing other municipalities in our area.
There
so
are
they-
many, many municipalities, and I've called up so many areas, whether they're municipalities, benefit providers, and everybody is just like, we don't know where to go. We can get an actuary report on this, but they only do the analysis. They don't walk us through everything else that goes with it. So we'll have a bunch of data that we don't know, okay, what do we do next? Yes, we'll identify people, but then what? And I think the fact that they're writing the policies for us, they're telling us, making recommendations as to what our reporting period is. We have to decide if we're going to do it for 12 months, if we're going to do a certain period of time, and that's what they're going to do with the data. They're going to make a determination as to whether the village should use a 12-month period, a quarterly period. There's an administrative period. I mean, there are so many aspects of all of this that we are just looking forward to be able to engage them and just get started. And what they will do, which is wonderful, is that when, of course, Tom and I, personnel and finance, will be providing them with the data. But they will come back to us and they said, John Doe over there, he's going to come over that threshold, so let's go. Contact the department head, and that's it. He's going to have to stop until next year. We don't know that now. I mean, we're abiding by civil service laws, no doubt, but still that does not translate to how they create the formula, because we have a very unique program in the recreation. We have people that work year-round as part-timers, and then over the summer, they're working full-time. So they're going to take all that data together and divide it out and say, has that one employee worked 130 hours a month over that 12 months when they combine all of that? Right now, we don't know that because we're allowed to do part-time, we're allowed to do seasonal, and it's all fine as far as our county reporting, but not when it comes to whether or not we would have to offer health care. And if we don't offer right? And if we don't offer the health care, we get penalized. We also get penalized if one of our employees is able to get a subsidy from the health exchange. So
The biggest thing you have to worry about too is that it's about personnel files, and that's where you'll have trouble doing intermunicipal agreements with the reporting and stuff like that.
And we're not all on the same systems. Not everyone's on KBS. Not everyone. Yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, Trustee Quesada, you wanted to comment,
Yeah.
and then I think we'll.
Linda, thank you very much. I think this critical, I guess, for your department and Tom's department to get this thing done. I guess what troubles me is like we do have to take $15,000 out of our contingency part, and that's not just going to be this year, but it may be pretty much for a very long time. Maybe not the $15,000, but probably less. My question is, I guess, how does that work? You said you looked at, you have talked to other municipalities, and it's just this company right now that is doing, or that has the best rating or the best criterias, the best information?
Well,
Is there
it's-
anything else out there maybe for next year that if we have to use this, it could be in a better price, so to speak?
Well, not knowing exactly what we're in for yet, but absolutely when I did get a quote from our actuary, maybe that's all we need futuristically. I don't know that yet. We don't know. Maybe we just need to have the analysis done yearly, and then we can manage to do the rest once the policies are written, once we understand what our reporting period is going to be. I honestly don't know the answer to that yet. Maybe as we get into this a little further and before another contract is up for renewal, we certainly would have a better understanding of it, but I don't want to give misinformation because I honestly don't know. I will say that when I called other benefit providers, they would not provide a service to us unless we had benefits with them. So that's where I was stonewalled in a lot of places. I did speak with people who have used this firm because some municipalities have started about 6 or 8 months ago with trying to create their reporting, and actually had the ability perhaps to correct some of their seasonal or part-time people, so they felt the need to begin it a little bit earlier. And everyone was like, that's the same, they were all in the same tizzy that they don't know where to go to find the information. And there is, in this area, no one else that will provide the level of service that this group is providing us at this point. Even there's another group out there that's part of, we're POMCO, and POMCO does not do this. There's also a group of MEPCO, which is a consortium of municipal employee health plans. They have what's called the Lawley Group, who's doing their analysis. I've spoken with municipalities who are in MEPCO who are dissatisfied with what Lawley Group is providing them and are going with them, going with CPIHR, because they're doing a piece of it and they don't have the staffing or the ability to feel comfortable with what's going on with not knowing what you're supposed to do. You don't know what you don't know.
All right.
So does everybody feel comfortable that we can support this? Because we're going to break into a special meeting at the end of our meeting, and we're thank you very much, Linda.
Well, thank you, and Tom and I would very much appreciate having the assistance.
The one comment I just wanted to, I don't know if everybody on the camera saw, but Corporation Counsel Lori Lee Dixon indicated that you would be able to make it more, you would look into making it more explicit in the contract that there would be what their role they would play if we were audited. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you, Linda. The next item, we're going to jump ahead to, can I just see the updated one? Thanks. We're waiting for an outside presenter. So while we're waiting on that, I will jump ahead on behalf of Treasurer Tom Warren, who is out of town at a conference, to discuss the 2015 small claim assessment reductions. And you've been provided with a memo, I believe, from his office, which enumerates the small claims adjustments for this particular year. The total comes to just less than $21,000. There was, in fact, $45,000 put aside, so you're well within budget. So he wants to move ahead with processing those and getting a resolution of approval. So if there's no,
It's fine with me,
no
yes.
question.
Thank you.
Separate resolution, separate submission to you from the treasurer as well, asking for additional board resolutions for closing out 2014. There were 3 particular areas that he wanted to cover, one of which was over expenditure in the water department, which was primarily as a result of over expenditure of electric costs, and also the result of purchasing water from outside entities, which is something that we discussed this evening. So that's one of the adjustments that he would like to make to cover the over expenditure in the water fund. With respect to the sewer fund, there was also, even though the budget itself ended up with a surplus, there was additional sums that were paid primarily for legal services to settle one particular claim that had to do with sewer losses, and also for bond and note expenses, which are associated with the Kilburg project, which is a sewer project. And the third budget adjustment was with respect to additional legal services, which were incurred primarily by John Walsh's firm. And this is directly resultant from the fact that we had several major cases that were authorized to be undertaken by the board, and which impacted certain properties that were under housing and safety issues, health and safety issues, some of which were taken on to the higher court appellate division. So that's a direct result of that. So those are the three items that he referenced that he would like to include in the resolution for next week. Any comments, questions?
Questions or concerns?
No.
On these
No.
items?
Good to
Great,
go?
thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay, great. So I think we have our,
You know what?
do you want to take a break for a minute?
Can we just
Okay.
take it? Welcome, Mike. We'll be moving back to our agenda in just a moment, but we'll just turn off the cameras, and we're back.
All righty, thank you. The next item, we're very happy to have Mike Gordon here from on behalf of Sustainable Westchester and Jewel Associates. We had the opportunity in the office to participate in a couple of the webinars with respect to community choice aggregation and also with respect to microgrids. And it was really, really a very enlightening experience, very helpful and informative. And I had an opportunity to speak to Mike, and I thank him so much for coming in this evening. Just from the information that we were able to garner, I thought the board would really appreciate and be able to learn a lot of these two concepts. So thank you so much for coming in this evening, and I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, I'll be, okay.
Because that
By the way. But, okay. Is this?
that way they can hear you on television. It's not
You
for
got
us.
it.
We hear you. It's the folks at home. Oh, if you want to walk around with
really?
it? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Take the
Oh,
show on
how
the road.
cool.
There we go.
Okay. So I guess what I'll do is I'll just take them in turn and just talk briefly about each of the opportunities conceptually, and then just answer questions. Maybe I'll first talk about community choice aggregation conceptually, and then take questions. And then I'll talk about microgrid conceptually, microgrid opportunity conceptually, and take questions. And then we can talk about how the two can potentially integrate if we actually want to stay here for that period of time. But just keep in mind, I have, because this is Ossining, I was going to fly down to Texas today, and instead I'm flying down to Texas for a conference at 5:45 in the morning. Just so that you
Thank you, Mike.
So this is the, I'm trying to gain a little cred here. So community choice aggregation is available in 6 states currently in the United States. Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Ohio, Illinois, and California. It's being introduced in Pennsylvania and Delaware, and in fact, our approval, this has truly been roughly, I think this board voted to request passage of legislation.
Yes, we
We've
did.
been working this for literally 3.5 years. And we finally successfully passed legislation through the Assembly. Amy Paulin led that endeavor, and through the Senate, it was led by Greg Ball. But it was, in essence, Amy's bill. She said, we can get this done. And then we waited 6 months to hear whether the governor would allow us to do this. And then we get a call from the chair of the Public Service Commission saying, okay, the bill is on the governor's desk, or we heard it was on the governor's desk independently. We get a call from the chair of the Public Service Commission saying, okay, what do you guys down there want? What do you actually want to do? Can we please have a conference call? And so the chair of the Public Service Commission said in that conference call that she felt that if the governor signed this bill, which allowed Westchester County specifically to do community choice aggregation, that the result will be that all the other cities and municipalities in the state would feel as if they need legislation to get it done. And so she, in essence, said, I'm going to urge a veto. So the governor vetoed it. And I told her what we want is we don't want you to ask the governor to veto the bill. That's what we want. Because, in fact, if the governor vetoes the bill, we're going to be waiting here another year. And it's not going to get done. Well, she said, I promise that this is going to get done pronto. And she said there's a little scene feature in our order that I just put out yesterday that invites communities to propose demonstration projects. We're conducting a statewide process to determine how anyone in the state can do this, but there's a second piece to this, and if you get this to me by Monday, I'm going to get this on the agenda as soon as I possibly can. And in fact, we got approval within 45 days of that conversation, maybe 48 days of that conversation. And one of the people on the Public Service Commission said to me that I've never seen anything get passed so fast in my life. I've been here 30 years and I've never seen anything get passed so fast in my life. And that's because the Public Service Commission considers this an absolute foundation in their reforming the energy vision endeavor. We've heard lots about REV, and another time we can talk about all the opportunities that are coming in from the REV. But they consider this to be their first feather in their cap related to REV.
What REV is?
Reforming the energy vision. It's a whole process that's being watched literally internationally, and it is redesigning the entire New York State energy market. It's being led by this woman, Audrey Zibelman, who chairs the Public Service Commission, and everybody is watching it. And it's remarkable, some of the stuff that she's doing. And we'll talk about some of the opportunities that are coming out of REV, some really cool ones. For instance, community solar is an opportunity that's coming out July 15th. We have to prepare for that if we want to. But anyway, I digress. So what we got is we got an opportunity for Westchester County to do community choice aggregation, for any municipality in Westchester County to do it. What that means is that normally, so your bill, your electric bill, is comprised of two bills. It's the transmission and distribution is bill number 1. That's the poles and wires. And then bill number 2 is the energy. And energy is deregulated, which basically means you can buy energy from anybody that you want. And those energy suppliers are not really regulated. And so that's why you get those slam calls which say, would you please buy electricity? And they won't let you off the phone until you say yes, or you say, put me on your do not call list. And so we have, but literally only 25% of the homes who could take advantage of that competitive electricity market are actually taking advantage of that competitive electricity market. We default so that when we don't make a choice, they make a choice for us. And the choice that they make is that we're actually buying not just our poles and wires, transmission and distribution with the utility, but we're also buying our electricity through the utility if we make no choice.
And for us, that utility is Con Ed.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if we, so basically, if we do nothing, we're defaulted. The choice is made for us. What community choice aggregation does is it actually switches who that default is. So that default becomes the community choice aggregator. In essence, it's community energy without taking over the poles and wires. That would be the ultimate. You still have the utility there. The utility is still getting paid for poles and wires and transmission and distribution. The utility is still responsible for maintenance. In fact, the utility is still doing the billing and still responsible for your meter and measuring how much you consume. So everything is still going through the utility, but the municipal aggregator is actually the one who's purchasing the energy on your behalf. The utility doesn't mind because, in fact, by law, the utility is not allowed to make money on the electricity supply. They'd much rather be focusing on the poles and wires and the maintenance. So what we create when we have a gathering of 15 or 16 or 25 municipalities, however many we're going to get in here, is we create the clout to aggregate and get a better price prospectively. Also, we could alternatively go for a fixed rate, and given the historical, I think natural gas prices are roughly at a 12-year low at this point, and so in my mind, it's a really good time to actually negotiate a fixed rate for energy supply. And so we, with $500 million prospectively of buying power, can go out and get a better price that an individual home would not be able to get on their own. We can also monitor that price. In fact, the Public Service Commission is going to require us to monitor that price and report on that price. And so a consumer is not just getting the clout of many folks buying together, a consumer is also getting the monitoring of both the aggregator itself, which acts as ombudsman, and the Public Service Commission, which is monitoring the aggregator itself. Beyond that, the consumer always has the right to opt back in to buying from the utility. So they can always use the utility if for some reason they're fearful and they don't really feel, maybe they see the benefit, but they don't quite understand. So the only thing that changes is your price and who is buying on your behalf. That's it. So I know I can do all sorts of conceptual leaping. I know that happens. So, questions?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I guess, so the notion is that we would collaborate with other municipalities and create a consortium, as it were, and we would leverage that buying power to reduce the cost of power, and then in turn, the citizens that buy power for their homes or whatever, they would get the benefit of that reduced price.
Yes.
Okay, so right now, as you indicated, was there something else you wanted to say, or?
No, I just wanted to get the yes into the microphone.
Oh, okay. But the other thing right now is, like you say, you buy the stuff, there's Con Ed, which is the way it gets to you, right? And then there's the ESCOs, right? Those are these groups that are all sort of supposedly competing with each other, and some of them say, well, our energy only comes from the sun, and our own energy only comes from the nuke, or my energy, or whatever it comes from, right?
Yep.
So if we do the aggregation, does that obligate the individual to either buy what we're doing, or they have to go with Con Ed, or do they still have the ESCO option, or help me understand those choices?
Great, they still have the ESCO option.
Okay.
If they're currently already purchasing from an ESCO in the free market, they are not opted out of that contract. They still remain in that contract. They have to actively say, I want to move.
Got it.
And caveat emptor, those contracts may have a cost of getting out.
Right.
They have to read that contract and make sure that they're not going to,
Be
run
penalized because they walk away.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So it's only the folks who have not opted into a competitive ESCO who are going to be defaulted. They still have the opportunity to go out and buy competitively if they want.
All right.
They have the opportunity to opt out and go back to the utility.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I just would want to make sure. I mean, I understand the benefit of buying in bulk like that with the consortium, and hopefully they get a lower price than the ESCO price. And certainly a lower price than what the utility would charge you.
Yeah, and in fact, so what we're likely gonna do is that we're gonna put out a bid to all of these ESCOs, and some of these ESCOs own their own power plants, and some of them will never serve individual homes, but they're calling up and asking to meet, asking to speak on the phone, you know, all sorts of, I mean, that's what's going on right now, and they're all calling because they read the order.
Got it.
And so we're probably going to do three things. We're probably going to ask for a variable rate that they guarantee to always be below the utility rate, period. That's one possibility. We don't know that we're actually going to get those kinds of bids from the ESCOs, but we're going to ask for them. We're going to ask for a fixed rate, and specifically, we're going to try and time this so that the fixed rate is below the trailing 12-month average. So it's like locking in a mortgage when the rates are low.
Got it.
And then the third thing that we're going to do is ask for entirely carbon-free, nuclear-free energy. And what the commission, or really is a combination, we're being cautious when we propose to the commission because the commission's concern is consumer protection. So we aren't asking towns, we're asking towns, municipalities to commit conditional upon either a lower rate guaranteed by the ESCO or a fixed rate which is lower than the trailing. So it's conditional, that commitment. We can offer 16 options to folks, but the question is, what would they default to if they do nothing? And we, for consumer protection reasons, likely have to default to, you know, a low price option. Doesn't necessarily have to be the lowest price option, but an option which is lower than the utility rate or fixed as opposed to trailing.
Yeah, I had a question. So the aggregating communities are going to assign a default other than the utility Con Ed, essentially.
Yes.
And the only option for the consumer will be to go to an ESCO on the open market or accept what we're telling them is their new default.
No, the consumer has all the options that they currently have.
Mhm.
So they could stay with the utility.
Okay.
Or they can go to an ESCO, or they can go to this default circumstance. This is just one additional option for them. In fact, the only difference is that this option becomes the default. If they do nothing, they end up there.
It's only concerning to me because we're reassigning their default without really giving them a say in that. So has there been an opinion from Albany that this is, for want of a better word, legal?
Yeah. First of all,
Attorney
it's not
General
only-
opinions?
It's not only legal, but the Public Service Commission considers it desirable and completely in line with creating competitive markets because people haven't chosen to avail themselves of those competitive markets. And in fact, the Public Service Commission is frustrated that people are doing things that, and you know the way we behave to the norm. And that's just the way it is. If the norm is that this is the default, well then people, naturally grow accustomed to whatever that is. So it's legal. In fact, the Public Service Commission said that there's no law required for them to enforce it. B, the Public Service Commission is creating statewide regulations on precisely how to do it and are looking to us to establish, I think there's a great trust in the Westchester communities that the Public Service Commission has offered the first opportunity for this demonstration to be in Westchester County.
So then, as a follow-up, there wouldn't be a need to seek an opinion from the Attorney General at this
No.
point?
The only opinion that we're seeking from the Attorney General is whether a referendum is required for each individual town. So, under General Municipal Law 360, it sets out requirements for a referendum. And it's our opinion that since we're not actually taking over the poles and wires, that we're actually saving folks, we're not imposing a cost on folks, we aren't limiting their options, we're creating an additional option, that no referendum is required. You may still decide that you want one. No, that's fine. But it's our opinion that none is required. So what we've done is we've sent a letter to the Solicitor General, which promises us a verbal opinion and then a written opinion within 2 months about whether a referendum is required.
Mike, I want to, well, thank you very much for being here. Mike and I have worked together a lot in recent years because we served on the steering committee together for Sustainable Westchester, and I'm thrilled that you are now one of the folks leading Sustainable Westchester. And this is wonderful programs that you're bringing to us to consider tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, hearing, questioning, and this is a long night for you guys.
Oh, we've been doing a couple of those lately. But I did want to clarify something that came up when you were speaking with Trustee Codman about the different options within the CCA, within the community choice aggregation. If we were to move forward with participating as part of the aggregation, there were the 3 different levels you talked about. You're asking the energy suppliers that are responding to your RFP to consider providing a guarantee that the rate will always be lower than the Con Ed for us. Another option would be giving a fixed rate, us being able to lock in at a competitive fixed rate. And then the other one would be the option of nuclear-free, carbon-free energy. Now, is that decision, does that need to be made at the municipal level? Or if we just become part of the aggregation, do individual homeowners default to the low price option and there, as a household, get to decide if they want nuclear or carbon-free?
The decision about what the default will be is going to be a joint decision of all the municipalities, what that default is going to be. And I feel that what we're going to do is collaborate on that decision, with respect to the differing priorities of the different municipalities. I can tell you that if we end up choosing one supplier for all 3, there may be the possibility that that supplier will be completely agnostic to a town choosing one way and a different town choosing another way and a different town choosing another way. It is possible. I do not expect that to be the case. I think that we're going to make a decision as a consortium about what is the default rate. Then, once you have that default set, you're sending out notification that's being paid for, by the way, by the energy service company.
Okay.
And that notification allows people to choose individually among those 3 rates.
Okay, so the default among those 3 will be determined by all of the communities that choose to be part of the aggregation.
Yes.
So all of the communities may say, whatever is the lowest price, this is a likely scenario, whatever is the lowest price we want, we'll all buy into that.
Yeah.
But then the notification to all of the customers will come in the mail. It'll be notified, you are about to default as of whatever date. Your energy supply will be coming in this manner. This is the rate. You're now part of community choice aggregation. And they will, at that time, have the option to, if they want to go for a nuclear carbon-free that has also been negotiated as part of the aggregation, I can just send back that postcard or go online and do that one.
And the town may find, a municipality may find that that you want to campaign among residents to by nuclear free. If you look in here, nuclear carbon free. If you look at Marin's with a contribution to their 20 by 2020, I think just the number of people in Marin County who opted into a carbon-free, nuclear-free, achieved like 90% of their 20 by 20.
Wow.
So
Right, and I know there has been some success. Like I think the whole city of Cincinnati has gone renewable energy for their entire city. So I mean, it's a lot happening that we haven't been privy to, and now this is an opportunity for us to see all that's really happening with more progressive
3
energy
million
options.
folks in Ohio, 80% of Illinois. It is now sweeping Massachusetts and will soon be, I believe, a majority of Massachusetts by. Jersey is beginning to do this. I think 20 towns have prepared requests for proposals. So it's happening.
Right.
And we have the opportunity to be the first in New York State and to blaze the path for the rest of the state.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. Is there a critical mass of communities that you need to go forward, and where do you stand at this point?
I expect we'll get 15 communities in round 1. And I expect that 5 will be in NYSEG territory and 10 will be in Con Edison territory. And I expect that we'll be doing, we might get to $200 million. I do feel that critical mass might be 50 million. That's what I'm hearing in Illinois. But I'll tell you, these guys, they know that there's going to be a round 2 and a round 3. And so even even if we end up going out with 3 towns, we're going to get good bids.
And you've already got your first town signed up, correct?
Yep, Lewisboro.
Yep.
And I think we're going to get most of NYSEG pretty rapidly because of NWIAC. I mean, there were 11 communities who asked for the bill, and I think that most all of you guys are going to be engaged.
Let me just hear from the trustees, and then I know our town supervisor has a question.
Yeah, so at this point, we did pass a supporting bill sometime last year.
A letter, support of having this
support.
option, right?
So it seems like this board or the village board is in favor of what, this where are we going? What is the time frame? Let's say we sign up tomorrow. What is the time frame with the rest of the
If we
communities?
do not need a referendum, I'll be conservative, 3 months till bid, though I'd like to hit 2.
Okay.
Until bid, you mean until you
Till we
have the
send
information?
out
Oh,
the
till you send out the RFP to the
And
suppliers?
then probably we're going to be very aggressive on them returning that bid. I think we outlined 1 week, but maybe we spread that to 2, and then I think that we probably want to make a collaborative decision within a week. So it might be 3 weeks after the RFP goes out.
And who makes that decision? Sustainable Westchester or the communities that are aggregating?
I think that we must make that collaboratively. We must make that collaboratively with the community because, in fact, what happens is we're signing a tri-party agreement. It's the municipality, it's the energy services company, and it's Sustainable Westchester. So in signing a tri-party agreement, we can make that decision and you guys can, say, hey, what's the matter with you? So that will be a collaborative decision.
So the more communities that sign up, I guess, the better rates are we going to be getting at the end of the day. So
yes.
So far, I guess it could be 1 or 2 so far. So that means that we only have to wait. So the whole process, to me, I'm trying to understand, is like the whole process. Yes, it could take 3 months, let's say, but in reality, it's going to take maybe less than a year, 6 months to 7 months, maybe, for more communities to get involved and to start moving
Well,
forward.
If the opinion is that we need a referendum, in fact, we're going to be here in November and we're going to be ready to start in December.
Okay.
If we do not need a referendum, I believe that that we can be out there in July. We can be doing this in July
2015.
2015.
He's been doing it for 3.5 years. He's ready to go. Trustee Herrera.
Yes, I wasn't on the board at that time, but I definitely am a full. Oh, I'm off. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I definitely am a full supporter of the initiative. Wouldn't it make sense, or maybe I'm thinking of it a different way, for us to wait until we have what we would consider a decent amount of municipalities who want to do it, right? So instead of just moving along with 2, that we say that will other communities say we won't move along until we know that they at least have 5 communities, or
It's what's happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a deadline for round 1, and then we're going out to bid. So at that point, I mean, communities are going to have to get on. And our sense is that it's going to take 2 readings. So basically, it's going to take a discussion, and then the second meeting, in many cases, it'll be passed. No communities seem to be, it's more of a race than let's wait around for the next one. And with each community, it creates a certain momentum. And so we're setting a deadline. You've got Lewisboro saying, you've got North Salem saying, I hope Lewisboro doesn't pass it so I can be the first. You've got, you got that sort of thing going on. And it has its own momentum. I mean, Paul Feiner was saying at lunch the other day, there's no downside to this. Yeah. And at this luncheon, I think we had 12 supervisors or mayors. We had 100% participation, 100% intending to pass. So, the question is, do people do it in time to get into that first one?
And the deadline again is when?
We haven't said it yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're going to set it at the board meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, I think it's great because at the end of the day, the community, the municipality within itself will still be part of the entire process from beginning to the end. So, and for residents that are watching to understand, this is just adding an option, a better option, from what it sounds like, and from what I've learned. So.
Yeah, and there's no commitment if it ends up not being better. So the structure of the resolution says, we shall if. And the if is the conditions around the price.
Right. So before we're able to vote on anything, there'll be some significant amount of paperwork that's provided to our corporation counsel for her to review and advise us on making sure we're protected in that sort of a manner and such. Okay.
A significant amount of paperwork is is anything that you want in terms of orientation and the resolutions that have been passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Town Supervisor Donnelly, Mike, if you could share that microphone with Sue.
Thank you. I just have a quick question, and maybe it will help clarify, especially to the audience, since they're not privy to some of this paperwork that we've all gotten. So this is for electricity. Because, you have to understand, too, we're doing this major solarized program, okay? So when you go solar, you're going to still get your Con Ed bill, and in the winter, if you have gas heat and you do a lot of stuff with gas, you're still going to get a significant bill. So I want to clarify to people that this is electricity. No. Okay, good.
So we're starting with electricity, but we have the right to do natural gas as well.
I think that's going to be the significant piece for people that be able to have a choice on what they pay for their natural gas.
And
That's going to be the big one.
And it is going to be big, particularly, up north they're not on the gas line, but down here it's going to be big. Yes.
So I just want people to understand that right now it's electricity.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to be lagging by more than a month.
So you can do your solar and still go on this program.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you're asking another question.
Stop the solar,
Too, which is that if you're already doing the net metering, will it have any impact on you? The answer is no. you're still getting your net metering benefits
Right.
precisely the same manner as you would otherwise be.
And the net, explain what the net metering is.
Okay, net metering allows you.
You're talking to a TV camera, right?
Oh, okay. So net metering allows you to. So if you put solar on your roof, you actually, if your meter runs backwards, it actually, in essence, allows you to have your meter run backwards when you're producing more than you are consuming. And in essence, you're getting the benefit of the retail rate for your electricity when your meter is running backwards.
Right. So you can save your energy for the cold winter months when you're.
Yep.
The beautiful summer that's going to be ahead of us.
Yep, and in theory, if you put, 10 kilowatts of solar on your home, you could have a zero bill.
Right.
But I just want to, when you
Yep.
throw terms out and you don't explain them.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I think Water Superintendent Teese, did you have a question?
Quick question for you. Will this group also look at off-peak consumption, like looking at offering the consumer the ability to use electricity at night at lower rates? And if that's the case, if you could do that at the municipal level, you could design your facilities to pump more at night and less in the day. It's more capital cost on a larger facility, but it could pay itself off.
So, all right. So there are two questions bundled in there. There's the ability to sell back, and there's the ability to manage your peak consumption, or even to move to more off hours where the prices are less. So it's demand charges in part, but also since there are 8,760 prices per year each hour, you could in theory shift some of your consumption to a lower price hour. So it's a really wise question in terms of the market knowledge behind it. So on the side, and actually, now I won't get into my last business, which I sold.
And you have a 545 plan.
Yeah, it's true.
And we have a whole other topic with Mike, too.
Yeah, just quickly, the business that I sold, we paid consumers for their willingness to cut back at peak moments, which is known as demand response. And the opportunity now will be that communities will be able to, en masse, actually sell into these markets where if you're reducing your consumption at maybe 10 hours a year, something like that, you can actually get paid for your willingness to reduce. And that's something that's not really available to consumers, but it will be available to consumers. It's not the first thing that we're doing out of the gate, but 3 months in, we're going to be doing a demand response offering, and we can do things like offer smart thermostats to people, and those smart thermostats can enable earnings. And so there's I don't need to get into any more detail, but that is an opportunity that you are identifying. The other thing is that on everybody's bill, there's a hidden charge. And that hidden charge is that they assume that you're using a certain amount in the one peak hour of the year. They assume it. And then that actually is like a little surcharge on your bill. And it's just a function of how many kilowatt hours you use. But if in fact you're using less in that 1 hour, you're being overcharged. And so we have the ability with this program to actually go document that we're using less in that 1 hour, and then go to the Public Service Commission and say, change our rate. But all of this that you're asking, this is all like CCA 2.0. So we're starting simple.
He manages our utility, so he has a greater depth of knowledge than most of us on how. So thank you. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe Does the board want to, there's a consensus to sort of go forward with this? Can we move on to the next topic? The
Well,
microgrid?
so it sounds like the next thing is you're going to send some paperwork to our corporation counsel who will review it and advise us, and then we'll see how we can move forward.
Okay, all right, great.
Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you so much. Now, microgrids.
Okay, so who am I sending, you've got to help me with,
Yeah,
with.
we'll do that.
Great, thank you. Okay, opportunity number 2, right now. The state has set aside, and this, by the way, is absolutely perfect for Ossining, because they have identified, thank you, they have identified Ossining as a key critical place that is having troubles. Yes, that Ossining is a somewhat...
We have no troubles. What are you talking about?
That's the other Ossining. That's the other Ossining. That's the town.
That's not this Ossining. But Con Ed has troubles with the transmission and distribution system here in Ossining and in Croton. They
Con Ed
have
has
troubles.
trouble. Con Ed.
Yes.
Con Ed has
Con Ed
trouble.
has-
Let's clarify.
Okay.
Okay.
That's no.
That's much better.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
they
Clearing
just
that
told
up.
us They fixed everything.
Yeah, so this is like the highway where they're getting all the traffic, and it's a real issue for Con Ed, which means that if you guys put a credible proposal together for a microgrid, you're very advantaged in this process. You will be advantaged because Con Ed desperately needs relief here.
Excellent.
A microgrid is something that can operate independent of the grid going down for at least a week, perhaps longer. The state has set aside $40 million to create 5 microgrids around the state. The process is that the state will invite 40 people, will pay for 40 different towns to do a study of where they want this and of, and of what cool places they can create a microgrid. That study is fully funded. Of those 40 studies or 30 studies or 25 studies, 10 of them will get $1 million to actually do all the planning for the microgrid. Of those 10 that get $1 million to do the planning, 5 of them will get $5 to $7 million to build out the microgrid. So let's say you don't win the $5 to $7 million, but you do win the $1 million. Now you have this plan to do a microgrid that somebody else may fund other than the state.
Or next time the state funds.
Or the next time the state funds, exactly. And so, now, you would think that it's a lot of work. It's not. Because the feasibility study should be done by a private firm, and they should be, in essence, your puppeteers. They should do all the work. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't have to write 3 or 4 paragraphs, and it doesn't mean that somebody won't have to go get some electric bills from a critical facility. If it's a school, if you identify. So we actually have talked through, we've talked through some of the locations here that might be optimal locations. There is going to be a little bit of work involved in this, but this will all be, the critical piece of work will be done by a private firm. So the critical thing that needs to happen on some sort of a time schedule, okay, just like CCA, I guess, this time schedule is a little bit more aggressive, is that you need to make a decision, if you want to, on what that private firm, who that private firm is who will lead this process. And then they will write support letters for you to sign. They will write support letters for a couple of the critical facilities to sign, maybe your Chamber of Commerce to sign. They will basically walk you through the entire process, and the entire proposal to NYSERDA, because it's a state agency, will be free And then the money would go to them, who will conduct the feasibility study. It's something like $50,000 to $100,000 for the initial feasibility study. We also have, so we did an RFP inviting firms to submit their capabilities to Sustainable Westchester, and we came up with 6 qualified firms. And that's on the Sustainable Westchester site. Now, I know that you, as we talked through those firms, you made a judgment, you have to make a judgment, you can't interview 6 firms, that based on those, that there were 2 that you really considered that were your preferences when you weighed the pluses and minuses. So I could take you through those 2 firms. One is, and I know you've met with Booz Allen Hamilton, and I know they came out here. And what you'll see on our assessment of these firms is that we say the strength of Booz Allen Hamilton is not only that they're capable, but they're hungry. They really are aggressive in getting this done and in going out there and obviously meeting you and making sure that, so they are a very impressive team dedicated to doing this. And they've completed, or they're on the verge of completing for New Rochelle. And so Booz Allen Hamilton is a great choice if you choose to go Booz Allen Hamilton. The other firm that you were looking at is a firm called Green Energy Corp. And our sense is they're capable. They've done 38 of these studies in Connecticut. And so it's probably in the end going to be more cookie cutter for them to do the studies. I think that your observation is that you aren't feeling that same hunger. And maybe that's because they didn't come out here. But also you may just be feeling something that's really true, that there's a little bit less hunger at this stage. The advantage in going with them, in my view, is that they have done multi-stakeholder microgrids, which is what this would be. And so a lot of the contractual documentation that would go in, the term sheets of how the companies would deal with one another, the private sector with the public sector, and who owns it and who operates it, a lot of that stuff is going to be more off the shelf and in place for you guys. So it's possible that in the next stage, with that $1 million stage, that you may actually have an advantage there. It may be easier for you, given that more is off the shelf. On the other hand, Booz Allen Hamilton is Booz Allen Hamilton. And so if they want to create a capability in something, they're going to go create a capability in something. So, so that's my back of the envelope on it. So I can, and I can go through the others because they're all very credible firms as well. But I just wanted to give you the skinny on that and also to answer any questions you guys have.
So just to clarify, at the time that we did the webinar, there were only 2 that were on at that time. It was very early in the process, so that's how we ended up with the 2, actually.
Yeah.
The second thing is, just to clarify for the board, that for the initial phase, if you engage a firm, whichever one it might be, there is no cost to the village at all, just to clarify that. There may be a little bit in-kind services, you may have to put information together, but there's no cost to the village. If in fact you do end up building a microgrid, that's a different proposition, but that's way down the road. The initial get-go, there's nothing.
And there may, in fact, it's even likely that there will be no cost to the village in building the microgrid. What will be a factor in whether you get the $1 million or the $5 to $7 million is the match. But if somebody in that microgrid wants to build a cogeneration facility and is willing to get a power purchase agreement or offer a power purchase agreement for the cogeneration, and is going to get some private financing for that power purchase agreement, that's going to count as a match. So in fact, there may be no cost at all. I expect there's likely to be no cost. It may be a really cool project for a full-time worker to be engaged in, with half their time or a quarter of their time. But I don't think there's going to be ultimately a cost. Yes, sorry.
But in the feasibility study itself, you could determine if some of the stakeholders are capable of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
and you
that's-
could include a stakeholder such as you're describing in that group.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's likely to happen. And that's precisely what's going to advantage the town in getting the $1 million. If you've got a stakeholder says, yeah, I want to put in a battery and, and solar, that sort of, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. This is pretty cool information, actually. This whole work session has been incredible today. So,
Yes.
yeah,
right.
it's like work session before LEDs. Now this, I think we just do it next week and get it done. You did mention that Austining was critical because of Con Ed and what is going on and everything. And you, within that, you mentioned that you have locations or proposal areas for this microgrid. Is that something with, you can give us a little more into that?
Sure. So first of all, we discussed a couple of locations in town, and the idea is that if it's a multi-stakeholder and includes critical facilities. So it's fantastic if it's a school and a townhouse, or a firehouse and a townhouse, or it just contains the police department and then there's a residential community nearby. So as long as it contains one critical facility, it's eligible. And in fact, you guys are looking at the water, which is a great opportunity. And if you look at the NYSERDA map, this is one of the things that lets you know how desperate Con Ed is to get Austining engaged. If you look at the NYSERDA map, they've identified the critical facilities on their website in Austining and Croton. It's the only towns in the county that they've actually identified what they see some of the critical facilities as.
Do you want to comment?
No, I need time to.
Yes, it's a lot.
Work this, but thank you.
I have
Yeah, go
one. So you mentioned Booz Allen. Is that because I'm an employee of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Is that the Booz Allen, the same Booz Allen they acquired? That's also known as Strategy and? Is that
It's Booz Allen Hamilton, BAH.
Okay.
And I was asked this question, and I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. So okay. Well, if that's the case, I would need to recuse myself from the decision because I'm an employee of the company that bought Booz Allen Hamilton and has integrated them as part of my company. So I can't really, I'm sure the rest of the board can figure out which one you're going to use, but I can't be a party to that decision because of my current employment.
Do you have any questions about the microgrid process or anything though? That's unrelated to
No. I
Suzanne?
think we're a poster child for this program. I mean, we have critical facilities, a water plant. We've got the prison. We got the schools. We've got firehouses all over the village. There's a lot of very, very critical facilities that if there was a sustained power outage, there would be huge risks, health risks, safety risks, all kinds of issues. So, you get no resistance from me. I support it wholeheartedly, absolutely. So.
As a matter of fact, New Rochelle I think they're doing an examination of two separate places for the same feasibility study with Booz Allen. So you could even take a look at a couple.
Yeah, so there have been email exchanges with several different entities that the village would take the lead, but there's so many different entities that we want to partner with. The town supervisor is here, the town, the county, because they have the sewage treatment plant, which is right next to Sing Sing Prison. We have, as Trustee Codman was mentioning, so many municipal buildings, which also includes our community center, which is an emergency shelter center, and and most of it is very densely contained in our downtown, with the exception of the very important water treatment facility, which is actually in the town of Ossining. So, yeah, I think we should absolutely get all the funding that's available so we can do really great things. I used to live in New York City. I lived in New York City during 9/11. And that was quite an interruption to a lot of our infrastructure. I lived in New York City. In fact, I was at a class in Columbia when the whole Northeast lost power, and we thought it was a terrorist attack 2 years after that. I lived in northwestern Queens in 2006 when I was selling my house and moving here, and we lost power for a week in 100-degree heat because 9 of the 10 transformers in northwestern Queens blew at the same time. And we all lived through Superstorm Sandy, and my block lost power for a week. That's 4 times in this millennium. I fully expect that if we get a microgrid, it will serve us well. It's not a question of if we ever need it to go into service, it's when. So I'm very excited to hear that we are such a great candidate for it, and that you have brought such an interesting project to us. I've been trying to understand microgrids from you for years. I remember being on conference calls and not having any idea what you were talking about when I first started hearing about this before I was even in elected office, so I'm starting to make sense of it. Thank you so much for working so hard to bring this project for us to consider.
Thank you. And I could say that working with you at NWIAC was a complete privilege. And it's great to see this board as engaged as it is. And it's great to see you doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Mike. This is a real love fest, but so next to I appreciate that, but so next, New Rochelle's already signed with Booz Allen to move forward with their application process. So, we're not first again. Man, Lewisboro beat us to CCA, and New Rochelle has already made their decision and signed. So, obviously, we need to internally make a decision on if we're definitely moving forward with this. It sounds like there's a lot of support for at least going through the first phase that costs us no money and minimal support and information from our staff. What else do we need to do?
Just make a decision, and they will then, whoever it is that you decide, will also employ PACE to help you with any land use issues in the study, and Sustainable Westchester to help you with any organizing issues, to write that one-pager of communication so that people actually understand what a microgrid is, and I promise you I will not be doing that right. But so basically that's it. Make a decision on who you want to lead it, and then let them lead you through that puppeteer process.
Okay. So this side of the table, it would
So
tell us.
there were 6 responses. We've heard from 2 of those, and so we'd need direction on which contract to review.
Okay.
I mean, I've forwarded you the information, maybe go through the information, we can all look at it again, and you can think about it and make a decision at a subsequent meeting.
Okay.
There are, I did speak to the people from Green Energy. They said they'd been contacted or have contacted 10 communities. So, I think we've heard the presentation this evening. It's a judgment call, but I think read through the material. They were both as responsive. It just happens that one of them happened to be up here for other meetings, and they managed to coordinate it.
Okay.
I think you got to read through the stuff and think of what you heard tonight.
And I think I think the principal of Green Energy Corporation was overseas on a singing trip for 11 days. So that's one of the things that may have happened.
To slow down the response from that.
Steve
that
Pullins, he
that's funny.
said it was totally cool.
We'll
But-
assume that doesn't happen all the time. so.
I think not. These 2 firms are very qualified firms, as are ERS, KEMA, NRG, and Schneider.
All
The
of whom
other 4
responded to the
firms.
RFP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nothing
but
to me right
clearly,
now, but-
gotta make a decision. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and have a good trip tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going home.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. This was in the mud.
I see there's a little smudge on here.
Yeah, it didn't go into the mud, but it got into the rain. So I'll leave this here. This is the worst copy of this.
Could you email us your presentation?
Sure.
So we can share it electronically.
Sure, and it's for your viewing too. Obviously, it's on the Sustainable Westchester webpage if you want to look at it.
Thank you.
Both this presentation and the discussion about the aggregation, I think, as well.
Yeah, this presentation, an extended version of this
Right.
presentation in case you have trouble sleeping.
That's great.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you. All righty. So I think we've covered the budget resolutions and the discussion of the finance. The final item on the work session is the village manager report, and I just want to abbreviate that report this evening. And I was making some notes for upcoming event, and it's just hard for me to believe that I actually joined the planning board in 1979. I came on as the youth member. I was like from grade school, but so that's a long time of service, and I just thank this board and all the other boards and the people that I've worked with for the opportunity to serve. I'm very connected with the community. I live here, of course, and I've seen a lot of things happen over a long time, and I think we're all very optimistic about the village. I'm very proud of the things that have been accomplished, especially in the last 5 years. I think we've taken some major steps forward on many fronts, but it wouldn't be possible without the collaborative effort of everyone, board, administration, and the hardworking individuals here. And I just thank all of them and all of you, and I just wish the village and all of the governing officials the very best, and very good hopes for the village of Austin again. So thank you. And with that, we will adjourn into a formal meeting. Yes.
We need a motion to adjourn to a special meeting, correct?
A legislative session, is that right? Is that correct?
Okay.
Second?
I can't make, I wasn't making the motion, someone
I'll
else
make
should.
the motion that we move into legislative session.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Codman,
Present.
Trustee Herrera,
Present.
Trustee Gazada.
Present?
Sorry.
And Mayor Garrity.
And Mayor Garrity. It is 10:38. I'm tired, sorry. There's nobody here to address the board. Resolution A, authorizing village manager to sign contract for ACA compliance-related administrative services. Resolved that the village manager of the Village of Ossining is hereby authorized to enter into a contract with Corporation Plans Incorporated doing business as CPI-HR, having an address at P.O. Box 293, Syracuse, New York, 13214, and with corporate offices at 6830 Cochrane Road, Solon, Ohio, 44139, subject to review and approval by the Corporation Council for consulting services in connection with Employee Benefit Administration under the Affordable Care Act, April 1st, 2015 through March 31st, 2016, at a fee not to exceed $15,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
On the board, this is the item that Linda McMahon came and spoke with us about earlier, and we had some pretty lengthy discussion about it, so happy to move this forward. Thank you.
Sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Letter B, resolution authorizing the village administrator to execute any and all documents to facilitate submittal of applications to the County of Westchester Community Housing Infrastructure Investment Program, CHIP. Whereas the County of Westchester has implemented its new Community Housing Infrastructure Investment Program, CHIP, to substitute for the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, and whereas for 2015, projects eligible for the county's CHIP financial support will be selected from those projects previously submitted by local governments to the county under the CDBG program and subsequently recommended for funding, and whereas the Village of Ossining has 2 projects that were previously submitted to the county under the CDBG program that were recommended for funding but not implemented due to lack of funding from the CDBG program, and whereas the Village Board of Trustees has sought staff and community input, conducted a public work session to review the County of Westchester's CHIP and the village's 2 eligible projects with updated work scopes and cost estimates. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining that the village administrator is hereby directed and authorized to execute any and all documents to facilitate the submittal of applications to the County of Westchester Community Housing Infrastructure Investment Program for fiscal year 2015 to consist of the following projects: North Malcolm Sewer Repairs, $626,370. CHIP request, $230,000. Village shares, $396,307. Water main relining and replacement, $2,552,512. CHIP request, $335,000. Village share, $2,217,512. Be it further resolved, this resolution shall take effect immediately. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Letter C, Fire Department Appointment, Steamer Company Number 1. Resolved that upon recommendation of the Fire Chief, Joseph Abreu of Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of Steamer Company Number 1 for interior firefighting at their regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session for personnel, specific person. Do I have
So
a
moved.
mo-
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, my gosh.
No discussion. All right, and with that, we will adjourn into executive session. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you will join us next Wednesday, April 1st, when we will be at the courthouse at 8688 Spring Street for our next legislative session. This meeting is adjourned.